Good afternoon and welcome. Sorry for a couple minutes of a late start there, but we will get going. So the territorial acknowledgement, we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Oki and welcome. Thank you. So in front of you, you'll see the consent agenda. So looking for approval of the consent agenda. Craig?
I'd like to pull 3.1 out and put it into the report.
Okay. Okay, so then we will have a motion that says Trustee Craig Whitehead requested that item 3.1 Public School Boards Association report be moved from the consent agenda for discussion in the regular meeting agenda. As there were no objections, the consent agenda was adopted as amended. So that's the motion that Craig will put forward, unless there is any objection. Anything else? We're good? Okay, so that is the motion that's on the floor. Those in favor? And that's carried. And then we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or omissions? So we were going to add, and I'll add it under the board chair's report, policy consultant. So that will be 12 point, what did you move the other item to? Okay, so 12.4 will be policy consultant. That's just an update. Any other additions?
Where are we going to put 3.1? Just out of curiosity.
We're putting it at 12.3 under board chair report.
Okay.
So you'll speak to it at that time. Unless there's action.
Well, there's an action item that's part of that report, so maybe it should go under 10.2. I have to ask the board to do something, so yeah.
Okay. So it'll be 10.2 and the policy consultant will be 12.3.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no others, looking for an approval of the agenda as amended. Andrea, those in favor? And that's carried. Next is approval of the minutes. So they're the minutes of the January 23rd meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, looking for an approval of the minutes. Tyler, those in favor? And that's carried. Next, we'll move on to business arising from the minutes. So the first is 6.1, March 2024, kindergarten parent-teacher interviews, celebration of learning. And I'll turn that over to Mike to speak to the memo.
Okay, and I'll start off. Really, the two items are, to some degree, they're sort of interrelated. So we're kind of going in chronological order, but I'm not sure that's the best way to do it. So we'll figure it out as we work through this. By all means, ask whatever questions that you have. I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of where we're at since we last met and kind of what my recommendations are related to both things. So as you know, in the last meeting, Trustee Jenny moved that the board requests the superintendent explore the potential to provide additional time for kindergarten parent-teacher interviews in March of 2024. And the background on that is, so traditionally by policy, we have time in the fall for parent-teacher interviews, and that is a full day. It's a morning and afternoon. Then we have time in the spring, and that's a half day. And so on the last few calendars, we've had parent-teacher interviews in October. So you have a full day, then we've done some PD after that. And then in March, we've done a half day. This year, and I think last year, it's an afternoon rather than a morning. So that's sort of the background. Previous to that, in years previous, there were times where we would do a little extra for kindergarten. So because kindergarten is is in a situation where they tend to have more students just because of the nature of the program. So if you're teaching an AM, PM class, you have, let's say, 19 kids in the morning, 19 kids in the afternoon, whereas a more traditional classroom, homeroom, grade 1 teacher, for example, would just have one class of, let's say, 22. So the board has, in the calendar in the past, put in some extra time for kindergarten teachers to complete their interviews. So, and it's traditionally, it's kind of been all over the place. Frankly, there's been some mixed practice. Often in the fall setting, it's been one extra day. So kindergarten teachers get a full day, and then kindergarten teachers and everybody else get another day. So kindergarten teachers would get 2 days, a grade 2 teacher would get 1 day, if that makes sense. In the fall, what would happen, there's actually a couple things that would happen. It's been kind of all over the place. So a 1 to 5 teacher gets a half day. Kindergarten teachers were in some cases getting a full day, another half day plus that half day. So kindergarten teachers were getting 2 days, and a 1 to 5 teacher were getting half days. That's kind of varied. It's been a little bit all over the place. Wasn't always on the official calendar, but it was in a follow-up calendar. So it was a little tricky to find. As you know, that got missed last year. I think it was also a purposeful discussion about how much time should be set aside in the spring for those kindergarten interviews. But I don't think it ever really got fully discussed in the way we've discussed it now. And so at the last board meeting, it came up and we had a conversation. I've done some background work on it. Basically, I've talked with our administrators, and we're a little bit all over the place, quite frankly. Some people have said, you know what, we really don't need extra time in March. The afternoon that we have in the calendar is good. Some schools have said, you know what, we really could use that time because it is going to be really tough for our kindergarten teachers to get it all done. And that has to do with a few things. One is depends on the size of your class, depends on how many families you traditionally get in the spring. And then you'll notice in the memo, I use the term parent-teacher interviews and celebration of learning sort of interchangeably. They aren't necessarily the same thing. So parent-teacher interview would be what we're all used to, where you sit down and talk to the teacher about how your child's doing. It's usually a one-on-one. Celebration of learning, they vary, but at the kindergarten level, and Andrea, feel free to jump in with more nuance if you think that's appropriate. You know, it tends to be sort of kids can come in, work at centers. So you can have sometimes multiple kids in the room and they're just showing, they'll often show their parents some of the things that they can do, or their parents will have an opportunity to observe them doing a center, that sort of thing, some sort of activity. We have a bit of a mix of practice in spring. Some people do the traditional parent-teacher interviews in spring. Some people do more of a celebration of learning. Some do a mix of both. So when I asked our administrators, well, what do you think here? What's your perspective? Again, some said, no, let's keep it at the half day like it is for everybody, keep it equal. Others said, no, we really need that extra time. So you'll see in the next motion, part of the proposal is moving forward is what and I'm going to explain the next proposal because it impacts what I'm saying we should do here as well. What I would suggest is essentially, if the precedent has been set that we give extra time, we give sort of double time for kindergarten in October. So we give an extra day because, again, they would have 2 classes of 19. Somebody else might only have 1 class of 19. Then we would follow that same precedent in the spring. So instead of just getting a half day, kindergarten teachers would get a full day. That way it's sort of logical, makes sense, and it's kind of consistent practice. The challenge for this upcoming March is the amount of time, amount of notice that we would give families right now would not be ideal. We wouldn't be able to be equal across the board. It wouldn't impact some classes because if you wanted to add in a Thursday morning parent-teacher interviews for kindergarten, if you didn't have a morning class, it wouldn't be a big deal. Or if you didn't have kindergarten on Thursday, but if you did, it would be an impact, that sort of thing. So in conversation with the administrators, we felt for this year only, it would be best just to give them some flexibility because the next day is a PD day. So if you can't get through all your interviews and that sort of thing, then you have the flexibility to be excused from that professional development and do your interviews. That way we're not disrupting families. It's not ideal to have your kindergarten teachers miss professional learning, and I'm sure they would rather be doing that, but we also want to give them that flexibility without really putting families out. So yeah, those are the thoughts on that. And again, we don't anticipate that every kindergarten teacher would have to meet the professional development or miss the professional development. They might be able to get their celebrations of learning done, but if they're doing the more traditional parent teacher interviews, definitely is a little bit trickier. So I'm sure you got lots of questions. Happy to answer them. And yeah, let me know what you want to discuss.
Craig.
So in the calendar, though, it's still listed as a PD day, right?
Correct.
So I'm just thinking that this would be an ideal opportunity for schools to have a little bit of independence, that it's listed as a PD day, but a school could, in their school calendaring, then say, but this will be additional parent-teacher interview time, so that if a school doesn't want to have that additional, the kids are still out of school because it's PD, right? So do we need to make any kind of I mean, to me, it's just, there's already a day there. Let's leave it to the schools to decide how they want to use that.
Short response to that is yes, absolutely. That's the rationale. Give schools some autonomy. School's already out on that PD day anyways, so we're not disrupting families. And yes, it's probably a bit of a governance question. I don't know that we would do a motion on that because it's more of an operational thing, is my thought.
Andrea?
Could I put a motion on the table for the next calendar then? Would that be an appropriate time? And then I could speak to it. 2024-25. Okay. I move that the board amend the 2024-25 school year calendar to designate the morning of March 13th, 2025 as additional time for kindergarten teachers to engage in parent-teacher interviews and/or celebrations of learning, and also add the day before March 12th as a full day for them to engage in these activities. And then could I speak to that before or?
Yep,
Yes.
no, you can speak to
Okay.
it. Can you just repeat the piece in regards to March
And
13th
maybe
was additional morning?
So March 12th, and so I could say to designate March 12th, 2025, and add the addition of the morning of March 13th to the calendar, if that makes it easier. And then if I could speak to that before.
You just need to be clear what your motion is.
Okay,
So let's
okay.
get that
That
clarified.
the board
before we speak to it.
amend the 2024-25 school year calendar to designate the day of March 12th, 2025, and the morning of March 13th. I think we should say the day of March 13th as additional time, because it's written as additional time. I would like the day and a half. Added to the current afternoon.
Okay,
that
we're
they're
just pulling it up.
being given. Okay.
Just wait for it to be pulled up so that we know when you're
Yeah.
talking about it, what you're referring to.
Okay.
Okay, so it's up there for us all.
Okay, so that the board amend the 2024-25 school year calendar to designate March 12th and March 13th for time for kindergarten teachers to engage in parent-teacher interviews and/or celebrations of learning. That would be clearer.
So that would be 2 full days then for
Yes.
kindergarten for March 12th and 13th. Yeah. Okay, so now you're welcome
then,
to speak to your motion.
Yes, and Kristen, could I have you pull up that 2021-22 calendar for me? Thank you so much. Okay, so I went back and watched the board minutes, the board meeting in December of 2021 when Dr. Gilmore brought the calendar forward. And you can see me asking her to give extra time in October, which she did honor. And it was not written on the calendar that we approved, and yet it was honored at every elementary school. They were given October 24th, the kindergarten teachers, in addition to what was written on the calendar, which shows that calendars can be used with grace, that it's not always exactly what's written there, that does happen at schools. And you can see Dr. Gilmore write that. And I missed seeing what was happening in March, and I feel terrible about seeing that. Sorry. Just need to take a minute.
Take a few deep breaths.
Had a lot going on then, and so I feel bad that I missed it because really for 27 years they've been given that amount of time, and I just want to tell you why. And if you look at this calendar in November, when we were using the early years evaluation, you can see that kindergartens were also given an additional 2 days off in November, which no longer happens now because we don't use the early years evaluation. So I just wanted to point that out. So if you were worried about the amount of hours that the kindergarten children would be in school, that is covered, because you can see that we're not using those November days anymore. The other thing that I wanted to say about it is that PUF funding, when children have PUF funding, coming with that are ISPs, individual support programs, plans, and we need to sit down with parents and look with an SLP at the children's goals, and that requires time as well. And so I think it's really important for them to have those 2 days, because if we want to really get kids off on the right foot, we want to give the parents more time to sit there. So if we are just going to add half a day, that's 3 hours for 25 children, 10 minutes of family. So I feel that they need the 2 days, and it also sends the message to the parent that we really want to sit down and talk about this child. And because it's their first year, parents really show up in kindergarten. They really want to know about their kids and support them. And so I think it's really important for them to have that time to be able to sit down with them and also do celebrations of learning. And so they may need that one day to go through all of the PUF and ISPs, and then the next day to do the celebrations of learning, or a combination. And I just really feel like when we lose things, they're very hard to get back. And I totally believe that it was just an oversight in March, because the previous 27 years, those 2 days were there. And so I think it would be really important, while we can't fix this year's calendar because of short notice, that we could get those back to where they were, to those levels. So that's my Hail Mary, and I'm just throwing it. So thanks for listening.
Questions? Comments? Tyler, and then Christine, and then Tyler.
I just had a question. Has there ever been, what has been the parent feedback on the 2 days off for kindergarten? Because that makes it a 2-day week for kindergartners. Was there feedback on that shift from 3 days of no school for their children to just the 2?
Mike?
We didn't discuss that specifically. I'm not aware of any feedback that way. I would certainly agree with Andrea. I don't know this for certain. I don't think it's an instructional hours issue, but I think it is. It is a potentially a family issue. I think that's something the board needs to consider. Is how much. What does that mean for families and having to get coverage, that sort of thing. But I think Andrea is right. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I don't know that we have to be worried that we won't be able to get in our instructional hours. I think there's enough there. Clearly, I mean, next year's calendar will be probably a touch tighter because we're 195 instead of 196. But I think given the fact that it's been done for many years, that that wouldn't be. But yeah, the impact on family, I think, is something you have to discuss. Yeah.
Tyler and then Jenny.
I have 3 things. We'll see if I can remember them all. So I'd speak against the motion. The first reason is in regard to a celebration of learning. If a kindergarten wants to have a celebration of learning, that's no problem. They can do that. They can use that day. They can use any other day to do that without having kids be out of the classroom, like without for sure not being there. So I have concerns in regard to parents for having kids out of school 2 days. That's just 2 more days. They got to try and find coverage, everything else when they're taking kids to kindergarten. So that's my concern on that. My other concern is obviously Mike spent a fair amount of time with administrators on this, and through the people in the know, this is what they came up with. So for me to say, now I realize Andrea obviously a lot better perspective on this than I do being a kindergarten teacher, but for me, I don't know. I don't know the nuances of it. So for me, I'm going to trust in administration and your discussions with them that this was their best guess at what we should be doing. The only one, the way that kindergarten works with morning class, afternoon class, and if we're only giving a morning, that for me. So it might make sense in my mind to have like a Thursday one day as opposed to a Thursday morning. But I wouldn't go beyond a day. I certainly wouldn't go to 2 days. And I just think that's far too much time, honestly, to be able to do any parent-teacher interviews. Like I said, if it was for celebration learning, they could do that anyway, and still they could do that. And with the kids there, that'd actually be better, honestly. Parents could come in, you could invite them in, whatever. So that would be my only thing with the half day is that, yeah, some kids then are going to be out of school that day and some kids aren't. And that one I'm a little iffy on. So if it went to a whole day, I could live with it, but I don't want to for sure.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it would end up being a whole day because right now, elementaries are scheduled to be out. They're in class in the morning and then they're out in the afternoon. What we would do is just kindergarten would be out the whole day. Just on that one day.
Turn your mics on.
Yeah, the 13th, it's got a slash through it.
Yeah.
It says no school for elementary and PM.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, then that makes sense.
And just to, yeah. No, but it's a good question. It's confusing and it's hard to even write it in a way that makes sense and is clear. That was tricky. So I'm glad we mentioned that. And certainly, you will find a wide perspective of opinions on this. There wasn't like, here's what the consensus was. In fact, I was a little surprised by that. I thought we would hear a little more consensus, and it was really broad. Some people saying that, yeah, we need not only that extra half day, but that day. Some people saying, no, we don't need it. Just give us the half day and we're good to go. So really depends on who you ask. And in a lot of ways, this was sort of a compromise that people felt like, yeah, we could probably live with it. But I'm sure there'd be many people who would have your perspective, Andrea. So I want to make sure the board knows that too, that we don't necessarily, people are like, yeah, I think we could make this work, but you would probably hear a variety of perspectives no matter what decisions made.
Jenny and then Andrea.
I just was looking back at the historical calendars, and it historically it's listed a little bit differently year to year when you put it in the calendar. The calendar always looks like this, like it does currently. But like if I look at here's 2020 to 2021, what it says in there is it gives the Wednesday and the Thursday kindergarten parent teacher interviews. And then it's no school in the afternoon of what is the Thursday for elementary only. And then you look at another year and it just says kindergarten parent teacher interviews to be determined. It says TBD. And just wanting to, I mean, what I'm wanting to clarify is um, if, so in this motion, this would mean that elementary all has the afternoon off, but kindergarten just has the full day, and it's only kindergarten that we're moving to full day? Okay. And then
Correct.
Friday is still listed as either can be used for PD or parent-teacher interview. So is what it is in the calendar, right?
Great question. So for March 2024, we're saying the PD day can be used as kindergarten parent-teacher interviews or professional development. For this, no, it would be the 14th would be considered professional development, wouldn't necessarily be parent-teacher interviews.
Because
Oh, but it says, yeah, it said,
historically it has
yeah.
always said professional learning or PTI
yeah,
in every calendar for that Friday day off. 'Cause
right.
all of our green days say that.
Yeah,
right?
most of them do. And
Just
just,
the legend at the bottom.
yeah, and you're right, and it does say that on there just to give you some nuance. So yes, it's possible that an elementary could do that, but the reality is high schools would be doing parent-teacher interviews on that day as well.
And is it typical that kindergarten is doing parent-teacher interviews on that Friday?
No, I believe they traditionally do professional learning.
So my last question, sorry, is it a school acts as a whole in this typically, right? Like if the whole school, if that elementary is doing professional learning that day or that elementary is doing parent-teacher interviews, right? Kindergarten's not separate from that. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Ideally, you're doing your professional learning together whenever possible. Yeah. There's always exceptions to that, Jenny, but that's generally speaking the rule.
Andrea?
I was just wondering if this goes down to defeat, we can still add the morning. And I just also wanted to mention after talking to a very storied elementary retired principal, people will make it happen because they always do. But in essence, you're just putting that sub cost back on the school's budget to somehow find the time otherwise to release the teacher to sit to go through the ISP, because if you're doing it right and it's a puff child, you need to spend half an hour with that parent to get that child off on the right foot. And so if that's what we believe in, that's what we believe in. And I also want to ask Morag, do you have any history on this, Morag? Because there must be a reason why kindergarten teachers were always given 2 days to I realize other grades have ISPs as well, but with puff children, you need to bring some people together.
I can't recollect all of the back and forth though, Andrea. I do know that the eye assessment was the big piece of the conversation of changing the days. As well, I know there's always been conversation about during the day, parent-teacher interviews on Friday. So the parent comes in, where are the kids, right? And so it has been that daycare conversation or care of the children versus the older students where they can stay home typically if there's PL or whatever. So that's all I can recollect. Yeah.
And I mean, just looking at it historically, I just totally feel it was just a clerical thing that was missed. And so it's only common sense that if you have 50 children and you need to get those two things done, that you be given the time to do it so that parents really have a chance to sit down and talk about those kids when they're little. And when you can, there's so many changes that can happen in their language skill through PUF funding. And so, And as I say, when you lose something, you never get it back. You just never, ever get it back. And I honestly think it was just a clerical thing. And I feel terrible that I missed it. So.
Question, Morag, you mentioned the eye assessment. Can you expand on what you were saying about that?
Just that the early years learning assessment we implemented in the November in lieu of a report card at one point, right? And so there was additional time needed to do those assessments. And so it just balanced out in instructional hours and kindergarten time. So anytime our kindergarten teachers aren't instructing, right, that's the assignable time that's missed for kids in instruction.
And then November dates for reporting back to parents on the eye, but we no longer do the early years evaluation. So now they're back to October and March. And I just wish that I'd ended my sentence with October and March but I think it is really important for people to realize that calendars are used with grace. Every single elementary honored October 24th for this year, even though it was not on our calendar. So, anyway.
Mike, there's obviously a historical change that happened at some point, and I'm not necessarily hearing what that rationale is. I understand that you met with administrators and had conversation of what they're doing currently and how to move forward with that piece, but did you hear anything in regards to where the switch or the change came from historically?
No, I'm not 100% sure. I know there was conversation last year. My understanding is there's purposeful conversation about lessening that time in March. Again, I think I'm speculating, so take it with a pretty large grain of salt. I think there's probably two things that have happened. One is more of a move towards celebration of learning in spring. I wouldn't be surprised if some of it had to do with you know, when you had the eye in November and you had those extra days, once you didn't use those extra days, you would also adjust what you do in March. So in the fall, you had, let's say, 4 days, 3 to 4 days, whatever the number is. And then in the spring, you had 3 days. So if you went from 4 days to 2 days in the fall, probably would make sense that you would look at, do you go a little bit less in the spring as well? But that's speculation on my part. I might be totally wrong on that.
Go ahead.
And Morag might be able to provide more clarity on this, but I think it should be noted that a student who has an ISP would have additional time with that teacher and parents and the learning team to plan and consult outside of that parent-teacher interview time. So just so there's clarity, that wouldn't be the only time a student that had an ISP or some difficulty with their learning or their learning program would be meeting with parents for consultation.
Additional comments or questions? Craig?
Yes. I just want to get clarification. Grades 1 to 5 will only have a half day in March for parent-teacher interviews. They don't get it in the evening at all, like the 12th.
They go into the evening as well. Yeah.
So on March 13th, it would start at, let's just say generically, everybody gets off at 1 o'clock. So it would go 1 till 7.
Correct. Yeah. Sometime into the evening. I don't know the exact time, but yes.
So what we're looking at is that you would have that 6 hours plus an additional 3 hours in the morning for kindergarten, right? Under
Correct.
the current calendar. Okay. And that on the Friday, then you could, if a school decided that they needed more time for kindergarten interviews, they could do that in the morning of the Friday instead of PD for that teacher, right?
Ideally not moving forward.
But
ideally this year, yes, but moving forward, that half day on the Thursday that morning would compensate, and hopefully you wouldn't have to do that on the Friday.
All right. So, I mean, when we're talking half day, it's actually long. It's almost a full day of, if you looked at it, the school day is basically 5.5, 6 hours. So you're actually doing a full day of interviews in the afternoon for 1 to 5. And so you're adding an extra 3 hours for kindergarten in that morning. So, okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Christina?
I've been on the fence about this one actually because I struggle with like the idea of children, of us, similar to what Tyler said, like taking children out of the classroom for periods. But I think this board has talked a lot about parent involvement and talked a lot about early years, and we've been advocating on a provincial level for early years. And I found myself struggling with the idea of children out of the classroom because of that idea of, well, what will parents do with their kindergartner on the extra day? And I had to sort of reground myself in kindergarten isn't daycare. Kindergarten is an opportunity for children and their families to establish a very strong foundation for lifelong learning. And if there's not consensus that that time is not needed, then I would rather err on the side of giving them the time to ensure that that foundation is set, allowing additional time in both the fall and the spring. Not on the grounds that I'm not swayed by the argument that they have more kids, because I would say high school teachers would argue with you about that one. But that if we value really ensuring that all the pieces are truly in place before the transition to grade 1, that if even some of our teachers or schools need a little bit more time, that they're permitted that time. So given some thought and appreciate all the pieces. And I do appreciate the context that, you know, children with ISPs and things are given additional time even outside of this. Just knowing that parent engagement is challenging at early years. Many parents are very overwhelmed with the concept of like all the learning challenges that their child will need support with, don't know how to ask those questions and may not even know until the spring what those, you know, pieces are. And so given the conversation, I'll be voting in favor.
Jenny and then Craig.
I'm wondering if you can lend any insight, because recognizing kind of what was touched on a little bit over there in comments that were made is for when we consider our other classrooms in other grades, there's a limited amount of time for parent teacher interviews when we're looking at March. So our grade 1 through 5, they just have that afternoon. Unless their school chooses to use Friday for parent teacher interviews, they're limited to just half a day to get through all of those interviews. Sorry, and the evening, right? Yeah. So thank you. What my question, and this may not be something that anyone has a ready answer for, but do we have can you give any understanding, how is Friday typically being used? Is there consistency in that? Is it typically being used for parent teacher interviews across the division? Is there kind of a trend there, or is it like, do they look at it and say, well, we need more time, so instead of learning, we're going to do interviews, or is it just kind of school by school, year by year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In October, I know this year there was a bit of mix where they mixed in some professional learning and some parent-teacher interviews. I'm not sure if we'll do that again. Talking specifically on the March 14th date, I'll give you my best understanding of it. So at the high school level, I believe, yes, you would have you'd probably have interviews going on that day. I haven't confirmed that with them, but I suspect you'd probably have some interviews that Thursday night, maybe some interviews going on that day. Middle school parent-teacher interviews would not be happening because they actually happen earlier because of when the way their terms change. And then my understanding is, generally speaking, at elementaries, that day is used for professional learning, and your parent-teacher interviews are the day before. Is that your experience, Andrea? Yeah. with the fairly large caveat that I might have some of those wrong. I'm fairly confident on the elementary, fairly confident on the middle school. I'm not 100% confident on the high school answer that I gave you.
Craig?
So I guess my question, as a former teacher that's done parent-teacher interviews, at any grade, it's pretty rare to have 100% of the parents show up to interviews. So if 100% showed up, yeah, you could use more time, but if only 70% of them showed up. And so I think what we have to look at is, and we don't have any data probably, how many parents actually come to parent-teacher interviews, and not just a particular school, but in the division. Because if you're making a motion that would affect the whole division. And if the average of the number of parents that would come to parent-teacher interview isn't 100%, well, then there's a dilemma there. And then we've got time, they're just sitting there without parents. And so that's one of the things that I would question is, what's our percentage? And if it was 100%, if everybody was coming 100%, we'd probably have to have more time for parent-teacher interviews. But if it's not, then I can't see us giving more time.
Andrea?
I would say in kindergarten, 100% of the parents come. They love to hear about their children. They're very invested in getting them off to a good start. And having done that for 27 years, I can tell you I did not eat or drink anything for 2 8-hour days, 8 to 12-hour days. Like I was engaged entirely that entire time.
Mike, go ahead.
And just to reassure the board, I know we're having lots of conversation on this, but this is not dissimilar to the conversation with administrators. So don't feel like it's a tricky thing to grapple with. It's complex, and there's not sort of any one size fits all solution that's perfect. So I just want to make sure you understand that as well, that this conversation, we've been through this. So yeah.
I'll add my 2 cents is that I as well sit on the fence in regards to the piece of, ensuring that we're honoring all of our families that need access to, not as a daycare for sure, but when they go to work and they assume that their kids are going to kindergarten, that their kids are going to kindergarten based on the school year. So sitting on the fence in regards to that piece and the impact that has, also having kids that I know the importance of having that relationship with a teacher and knowing and understanding what is being done in the classroom with our students, and having that parent engagement piece is so important. For me, the biggest piece is that I haven't heard a reason or rationale for why the historical change from where we were to where we are now. And I haven't been able to hear that. So I will be voting in favor of this for this year. And that I would ask that next year that there be some more digging go into the piece of how we historically got to where we are today and what we can work on and look at for all of across our division, what would best support our staff across the division. So I will be voting in support of this at this point. Other comments? Christine?
I feel like there's 2 conversations going on for 2 school years at the same time. Can I just confirm, are we voting on a motion for 2025, 2026? Are we voting on a motion for 2024, 2025?
We are voting on a motion for September of 24 to June of 25. Yes, so it will be for next school year. It will not impact this school year. And then the following calendar is where I'm asking for more conversation to happen. Yep. So, any other comments or questions? So at this point, I will turn it over to Andrea to close on her motion.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Mike, for the work that you did in asking admin about it. I, from the lens of a parent and a former kindergarten teacher, found that relationship just so important, and it gave the child a chance to shine. It also should be noted that part of kindergarten hours are about getting together with the parent and the child and letting the child show all those skills. So no matter how it is rolled out, if it's individual with that child and a teacher and the parents and the little siblings, don't forget the little siblings. They are having so much fun in the kindergarten room. Or if it is done as celebrations of learning, we want to send a message to our parents and the children that they are important and that we want to sit down and get them off on the right foot, because that is what we've been all about. And so I would like us to show that through our calendar, that that's where we would like to support children as they start. So thank you.
Kristen, are you able to come to a mic and read the motion so we have it clear on what we are voting on? So this is motioned by Andrea. And this is what the motion is.
That the board amend the 2024-2025 school year calendar to designate March 12th and March 13th, 2025 for kindergarten teachers to engage in parent-teacher interviews and or celebrations of learning.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor made by Andrea. Those in favor? And those opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so that takes care of 6.1 and 6.2.
Yeah, I just, sorry, I got
Go ahead.
turn on my mic. I just want to confirm on 6.1, or whatever it was, on March 2024, just make sure that I caught everybody that we're okay with the plan that I suggested, that all, from an operational perspective, we'll just send that out to administrators, say this is what we're going to do this year.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. So moving on to Associate Superintendent's report. The first one is business and operations. Christine.
All right, thank you. The first piece is I wanted to give a big kind of shout out and thank you to Human Resources. I know Robbie put it in her report as well. Human Resources has worked really hard with representatives from our caretaking and facility services staff to develop a caretaking training manual, much needed. Make sure that we're training all our caretakers consistently, safely, making sure everybody understands responsibilities. And so I really appreciate the people who worked on that, as well as Human Resources really did take the lead on that. So that's a big thank you. Of course, really excited. The new school is taking shape. The pictures you see here are actually, it's amazing how a couple weeks will go by. They are so old. We have now got our classroom wing up in steel. Might be two classroom wings. I haven't been out there in a couple days, but they're really moving quickly. They've had some good weather, except for, of course, yesterday. So we're pretty excited about that. I do have, if anybody here around the table has not had a chance, I do have the renderings of the school, plus the board that has the materials on it right over here. So you can see what the inside of the school is going to look like and what the kind of the materials are that we're putting in it. Very excited. So that. Of course, budget day is on Thursday. We always in finance are really excited for budget day. We always hope for the stars and the moon, and then sometimes we don't get the stars and the moon, but we always stay optimistic, cautiously optimistic. One thing too, that part of facilities, I do, and because I didn't have enough room, you see the picture there of the water main break. Agnes Davidson had a water main break on February 6th. And a big shout out to Daniel Heaton working closely with the city of Lethbridge to get some temporary water in and get that school reopened. They did some work over the break in February to do some more repair work, and they may still have to do some in the summer yet. It's a 70-year-old piece of infrastructure, so its day came, and luckily we only had one lost day of school. And let's see. Next one is on occupational health and safety. At this time of year, I always like to look and see what our stats were for the last year. And so I've got some 4 bubbles, just identifying. So from January to December, we had 357 reported employee accidents or incidents in our system. And when we look at who is involved in those, mostly in those incidents, those are staff that engage directly with students. So 89%. So our educational assistants and teachers, because a lot of those injuries are things like physical contacts with humans, bites, sometimes objects, that sort of thing, muscle strain. And so that's why it's really important that we do have all the training that instructional services does with our EAs and teachers to help keep them working safely with our students. 70% of, we also track, of course, when we have an incident, was it just reported? Nothing. It was just an incident. There was no medical required or anything like that, or was there first aid, outside medical, and 70% of our incidents really are just reporting an incident. There's no other further action required. So But when we're trying to, we'd like our incidents to go low, but at the same time, we also want to know about them because that's how we also use it for, just improving our practice. And technology, they've just been busy, roadshow, esports, of course, our esports tournament in Lethbridge, May 3rd to 4th. So lots going on with that in preparation. And the team has been out at Alberta Teachers Conventions across the province to promote it. Jesse and Koji and Allison were up at Public School Boards on February 8th, also promoting the esports tournament. Really lots of, I talked to Jesse about is just his interaction at the Calgary Teachers Convention and a lot of interest about, well, how are you making that work and how does your division allow you to do this? And so lots of great sharing that went on. We're really excited. We have 3 practicum students from Lethbridge College that are with us. And so you would have seen, I think, 2 out of the 3 were at the town hall helping out with the tech team. And so we're really happy to have that young energy for our team, helping them out and giving them some boots on the ground experience. And yeah, and of course, our tech team loves sharing what their career as tech professionals are. They of course participate in Epic Career Day. And one of the other things that it's behind the scenes, we don't usually see it, but it is really important. Our security analyst does he does what we call network penetration testing. That's where you go in and you try and see what you can get into, what kind of trouble you can find to see if we have any vulnerabilities. And we were pleased that the results were very good. However, there's always improvement, and so they were able to make some changes after that testing. And transportation area, not a lot going on transportation right now, other than I just want to give some stats that currently we're transporting about 4,600 students, or we have 4,600 students eligible, for transportation. And then we anticipate there'll be another 1,500 eligible when we do the new walk limits for next year. We're just working on our registration process and hoping to get that out in the next month or so, and that'll occur. I want to make a course of advertisement for the ICE showcase on March 20th. Garrett's been working really hard with the schools to get showcases of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship of our students and staff. And so we're really looking forward to that event, and that's going to be at Chinook High School. And that's about it, unless you have any questions.
Craig, go ahead.
I would just like to pass on some kudos to Southland. I drove down 20th Street yesterday, and they're still working in front of Agnes Davidson, but the school was in, and it was amazing. It was just at the break at the end of the day, and the buses were on the avenue, and things were going smoothly. So kudos to the school and the bus Southland for being able to work within that situation, because they had it blocked off. Like, you could not go down there. So just pass that on, please.
Jenny.
I just wanted to acknowledge the positive relationships that we have with the city of Lethbridge, and the opportunity that's given us to have them contribute to that gym at the new school, and how exciting it is to have bleachers. And that we're able to have that collaboration, which allows that space to be used not just by our students in that school, but by the community as well, and allows us to enhance that space for our students as well. So thank you for that relationship with them.
Andrea.
I'm very excited for the ICE scholarships. It'll be the first time that I showcase, I should say, that I'm there. So I'm excited for that. And I just wonder, with the changes to the busing and the difference between a grade 6er and a grade 8er, if they're in the same family, are there special talks at middle schools for siblings about that?
We have not had those discussions yet. One of the things that we normally do as practice is if there's room on the bus and one person's eligible, not eligible, we then put that person on. So obviously when we have families, when one's eligible, not, that would be number one priority would be to transport those. So until we have an idea what that looks like, I can't even, yeah, but it's something we'll look at for sure, because we know it's an issue, and we have brought the issue up to Alberta Education that it doesn't make sense to have a 2-tiered kilometers. So.
Thanks very much.
And we're certainly advocating as trustees in regards to the unintended consequences of having that grade 6 piece, and us having some flexibility around that and the importance of it. So one question that, and you may not have the answer, but just to hear if you have any information in regards to the busing for next year, and I know there's lots of plans in place, is that bell times are always a piece that comes along with it. So are you able to provide us any information of where things are at with bell times for next year?
Sure, I can. Or do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it? I'll start. Okay, sure. So what we did is we did form a bell time review committee with our administrators and working with Southland, and we had a meeting to talk about bell times, because we we did a survey of our administrators, and it's interesting because we have elementary schools who don't want to be late and they want some tweaks to their bus times, but then we have secondary schools who actually like their bell times, and Southland is explained to us that our everybody's interdependent in order to make our bus times work, and also affordability. I could have everybody on the same bell times, but I'd probably be doubling the fleet of buses. And we can just pay the bills now with what we've got. Very, very complicated, very integrated. The other thing the committee talked about was, next year we have the new busing. We don't know really the impacts of that kilometer change on our system and what that might do. It might result in having to tweak just because of the sheer numbers. We don't know. We don't know yet. We're also opening a new school in West Lethbridge, and we're reviewing boundaries in West Lethbridge, and that could implications. So we've lived 2 years already under these new bell times, and we didn't want to upset the apple cart for next year with unknowns that we're not sure of, and then have to change again. And so the committee felt it was best to hold the line now, start early October, then really examining, are there creative solutions to solve the bell time issue? Because we know that at elementary schools, we need to tweak it of some. There's something we need to do, but how do we do that in a way that makes sense and is still affordable to the division? Because we just don't have an extra $1 million to throw at the problem. So, but we are looking at.
Thank you for the update. On you have more to add? Okay, go ahead.
Very quickly, and thank you, Christine. And yeah, when the board knows this, but when you see the town hall data, you'll see that came up very similar to the conversations we've had with our administrators, particularly at that elementary level in terms of the time in the day. And, almost that kind of 8:15 to 3:15 day is probably close to optimal at the elementary level. I mean, you can find people who would disagree with that, but that's probably an area of potential consensus. The challenge is, as Christine said, we do a lot of double runs. So you'll drop off at an elementary, then you'll drop off at the middle school. We also have 2 divisions that share busing, which makes it more complex. And so in many ways, you almost need to decouple the elementary busing from the rest of the system to get the bell times the way that you want. And that's just not feasible right now. But again, as Christine said, we're going to keep looking at it because there's going to be big changes to the busing system once the kilometers change. We don't promise anything, but maybe there's opportunities there to make some changes. But I want to make sure that people know that it's not falling on deaf ears. We're aware that's a challenge. We just don't have a great solution yet, but we got lots of smart people in this division, fortunately, so we'll keep working at it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that it's certainly a question on many minds, whether that's a parent, a business member, or whether that's a community agency. Our bell times impact many in the community. So I think just being able to have that, knowing that at this point we're holding the line is great. Do see Christina has a question as well. Another question I have is, I know that we did not pull from consent agenda in regards to the boundary review committee, but I see that you highlight a couple of pieces within here in regards to the boundary review, and just wanted to highlight that we are continuing to work on boundary review pieces. We did have the Spanish bilingual program meeting at Coalbanks as well. The board has a meeting coming up this week to look at some potentials and make some next steps. So the board is working hard, the division is working hard, and we will share as we can and make sure that those engagement pieces are important, and that it's not that we're not doing anything. There's lots being done, and it's will be shared as we're able. So Christina and then Craig.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and always thank you for. I feel like you're going to put Garrett out of business with your fancy reports. Just a similar, I'm sure you've heard it, but just so we can represent some other feedback we've heard about transportation as we can continue over the next couple of years to consider the new routes and things, is appreciation out to the schools who are investing in active transportation. It came up again at Wellness Committee and hear it regularly, like schools who have implemented things like skateboard. I know I always talk about them, but the skateboard lockers at Fairbairn are the coolest thing. And I'm obsessed with them. And like schools that invest in more bike racks and ensure that there's scooter racks and help kids ensure that their bikes don't get stolen. How do we encourage that? And so thank you to those schools who do that, and to the city of Lethbridge for their investment in their transportation plan around safe routes to school and working with the different initiatives that encourage schools to participate with the city to help build safe routes to school, knowing that transportation like line moving in serves many students who absolutely 100% need busing transportation, and removes the incentive for many families who could absolutely on their own 2 feet get to school, walk, roll, run to school. That's like a great way to engage in a healthy way with our school division, and so appreciate that opportunity continues both from the city of Lethbridge and from the division at a school level. So just want to encourage to keep active transportation in mind. And how do we encourage that? And if there's ever anything from like a board level that we can advocate for to continue to work on active transportation, because we know it improves learning if you come to school with a brain full of oxygen, right? That's a really good way to promote learning. And then the other sort of evidence piece around learning and transportation around high school start times and how much sleep teenagers need and what times are optimal for student learning. So that comes up a lot when I hear about bell time. So always just need to do my piece to represent it.
Thank you. Craig.
Now that you brought up the committee, I'd just like to go on record that as chairman of the Boundary Review Committee, we've got lots of positive feedback from parents that came to the 2 sessions at Chinook High School, and very positive feedback from the parents of the Spanish bilingual program. They were pleased that we were taking the time to listen to them, and that we're trying to be as transparent as possible, and that and maybe Mike could just explain the timeline that we're looking at after now that we've had the input on data. If you could just, so the parents, or Christine, one of the both of you, because it just helps the parents understand, I think, publicly how we're moving forward on this.
You'll see, because I think usually I do the wrap up and talk a little bit about the timeline. So, but you're more than welcome to correct me or jump in. Yeah. The plan is to bring something to the community here in the spring. I don't want to say particularly which month, because we need to figure that out, and then engage with the community, give them an opportunity to give us feedback. Then in the fall, we need to make decisions, and by about November, we have to have those boundaries done. So the board likely will get an opportunity to debate and vote on the boundaries likely in November. That's kind of the, if we wait any later than that, it's really hard to do with busing. Yeah.
You did a great job. You captured it correctly.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Excellent. Seeing none, we'll move on to instructional services. Morag.
Thank you, Allison. You may have noticed I've started to mix up the report a little bit and add in one of the many different groups that we work with regularly. So we have over 45 people under the umbrella of instructional services. And as I sort of wanted to craft and make it more interesting for you all and more informative, I added in SLP information for your perusal this time, and I'll just try and add a little bit from each of the different interest groups that we support in instructional services. Some very new news hot off the presses. Jackie's first full day back was on Monday, so really delighted to have Jackie back in health, and already she's doing laps around me in instructional services, which is good to see. New news as well for staffing. Carly Campbell is our executive assistant for instructional services now, effective March 4th. And Kathy Knelson has decided to leap on the instructional services transfer train, and she is moving from the Curriculum Resource Center up to instructional services on the top floor. So it's great to have our humans and that administrative assistant team almost whole. So now we'll have to be posting sometime shortly for the Curriculum Resource Center position. Another piece that was not in the this report is March 7th. There is a dual credit discovery night. We just received that information just shortly here, so I will send that out to you. If you wish to attend, you're more than welcome to attend. I think it's actually married to the March 8th day that I'm sure some of our representation from our school division will be attending. Yeah, just wanted to also add in the behavior supports update. We do have a behavior support team. They were restructured 4 years ago to a behavior support teacher and 4 AESs that support primarily elementary, but middle and some high school. And just receiving some really great feedback around the work that Mackenzie Penner and her team of AESs do around the division. Any questions? Fire away.
Great, go ahead.
Just for the public listening, SLPs and AES, could you just tell the public what they stand for, please?
Yeah, so speech language pathologists, they are the crew that primarily work with folks like Andrea in our kindergarten and early ed programming, but also from K to 3 intensively and consultatively. And then AESs are advanced educational assistants who work with our behavior team.
Okay, thank you.
Andrea, go ahead.
I just wanted to say it's so wonderful to hear that Jackie is back and in good health. That's awesome.
And I'm just curious if you can provide us a bit more information about the advanced educational supports on the 3-week rotation. It talks in regards to that. It's a new service delivery model. In terms of the 3-week rotation, are they 3 weeks in one school and then move to another? And then what happens if there's needs in that 3 weeks that they're not present at a school?
Sure. And so once upon a time, it really was more of a referral-based process. So the AESs would be all over the division. The intention of moving this behavior support to specific schools, so the AESs were designated to those schools, so you get to return to that school. So there is a much more relationship-based service than there has been previously. And they do go back. It really is a cluster of schools they're allocated to. They try to hit as many schools as they can, but they say, okay, we're here for 3 weeks. We're going to target these kids, provide some supports for our EAs that need that PL, and then work with the teachers, and then they would go to the next one. But then if there was some percolating events that maybe requested or needed them to come back, they would. So it's not sort of hard and fast. The feedback from the schools has been they really appreciate having that designated AES to go to their school. So it saves a lot of confusion of trying to get somebody to come when they already know the person. There's a relationship with the school, right?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Morag, and your team. And next, we'll move on to Robbie for Human Resources.
Thank you. You'll notice I've updated my picture in the top right-hand corner. Notice you all noticed that last month, so I thought I'd point that out. Thank you. Just a repeat of Christine's shout out, Rhonda and the subcommittee with creating and doing the work for the head caretaker and support in that area, and the handbook was very well received. So again, to highlight that and how well that went. Another highlight and shout out to Katie Guccione in Human Resources, who oversaw the beautiful art display at Town Hall. We had 11 different schools art represented there, and we did personally thank some of those individuals who put together some of those pieces for such a lovely display.
Questions, Craig?
Yeah. When you talk about contracts extended, are those still temporary contracts, or are they moving from temporary to permanent?
No, those are our contracts extended that are temporary contracts covering for somebody's leave.
Okay, thank you.
Andrea?
I just wanted to say that artwork was breathtaking when we walked in. So thank you. And then I love how it was dangling. I was like, if I was still teaching, I would be using that method. That was beautiful.
Well, and let me give you a quick background on that. I won't spend long on it, but we went in the week before to look at the gym. We're like, oh, that plywood would be nice if we could put something up to make it look a little better, but like, it's probably a little too late. And of course, Katie just got a little spark, and I knew she was working on something. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do not spend. She's like, no, I got it. And yeah, she organized it and took care of it. So yeah, really appreciate it. And I'll echo those kudos. That just made it such a nice atmosphere. So lots of little things, and I'll talk about town hall later. Lots of people did a lot of work to make that happen. So yeah,
Absolutely love the innovation within our staff and what we find in our division. So thanks to Katie. I noticed that the caretaking manual, training manual, is in our agenda package 3 times, but I wanted to save it for this part with Robbie to add some pieces. So just wanted to say that I think the evolution of it coming into existence is important. It sounds like it was something that came forward from our head takers, and just them being head caretakers, for them to be able to do their jobs better and to be able to do what they felt is important to them. So I do feel that this is really about reflecting what we've heard from our staff, and wanted to say thank you for the work. I know it was more than just you, but I do feel that it's probably more in the human resources area that I wanted to pass that on. So thank you. Mike's about to talk. You're good? Okay, sounds good. So we will move on then. So next is superintendent's report, board priorities report.
I was just jumping the gun because I knew I was next. Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah, so as per usual, I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights, and if you have questions, by all means, let me know, but otherwise, we'll just kind of roll through it. First one I wanted to hit was very first point under governance, delegation from Lethbridge School Division. Had an opportunity to present on esports to PSBA. And, you know, I know that Johnny and Jesse were also promoting esports at teachers conventions up in Calgary and down here in Lethbridge as well. So just really passionate and appreciate the work that they're doing and the impact that they're having for kids and giving kids an opportunity to pursue their passion, which is pretty cool. So yeah, just really appreciate that. Under collaboration with other school authorities, municipalities, and community agencies, talks about Morag and Jackie met with the CASA Mental Health Management Team and Alberta Health Services. I don't know what CASA stands for. Yeah, I meant to ask Morag before the meeting. I know you, but this is an important point. I know you have asked for us to not have as many abbreviations, and we'll work on that. I haven't talked to the leadership team about it, but Kristen and I, as the board priority report, we're like, ooh, we got to get some of these, and you'll see we did get some of them, but I have to talk to the leadership team, so when they send it in, to make sure we're not doing as many abbreviations. But really, what it has to relate with is the possibility of sort of maybe a multi divisional, certainly multidisciplinary in terms of education, Alberta Health Services, a way to potentially provide additional supports for students who have all kinds of challenges. There could be mental health challenges, behavioral challenges, those sorts of things. So we don't know where we're going to end up on that journey, and it's something that we will talk about more specifically and in more detail as we get into budget. So we don't necessarily want to get into details right now, but just as a heads up, there's some conversations about some collaboration there potentially that that might be something that's really works well for the division. In terms of priority, growing, learning, and achievement, there's a bunch of stuff on literacy and numeracy here. I won't get into all the specifics, but what I did want to say is, as you read through this, I think one of the things you'll notice is new curriculum, new curriculum, new curriculum, and in particular, how new curriculum ties into pedagogy, the teaching that happens in the classroom. And so part of the strategy with new curriculum has been, as new curriculum comes in, it's a great job for a great time for us to look at our practice as well, what we do in the classroom. So we already are making changes because the curriculum has changed. So not only does the content change, but also some of the teaching strategies that we use. It's a great opportunity to change them, do a few things differently. So Aaron Herkett and the lead teachers have really been working hard on supporting that. And I know in particular, our classroom teachers have been really working very hard to adjust to the new curriculum, but also use it as an opportunity to adjust their practice, make some little changes that you don't always get time to do during a regular school year. We'll skip all the way over to wellness. Oh, yes, you can.
Just for, again, for the public's sake, I think for the new curriculum, because it does come up often and it's been challenging for parents to keep up with, even I think for all of us to keep up with all the changes, that the new curriculum is available online to see, and that we always encourage parents and students even, that if anybody has questions about like, what is my child learning in their class? Obviously you can go online, but also to just ask your teacher. I think sometimes people forget that they're allowed to ask their teacher for like, what are we going to be learning this year? Knowing that it's very likely different than what they learned or what even an older sibling has learned. That there might be changes or tweaks or like different composition or different pacing, and that it's important for parents to feel welcome to ask that of their teacher and get that clarity in the classroom from the educator themselves.
Yeah, great point. And yes, our classroom teachers are the best source of information there.
I'd just like to thank Mike and the instructional services team for having Aaron Herkett come and talk to us at Committee of the Whole. It allowed the trustees to develop more fully understanding the curriculum, the new curriculum. And I think that's valuable because now if parents ask a trustee, we have a sort of a understanding of it. And that was a very valuable 2 hours that we spent with her, and I appreciate it. And I want to pass on kudos from me to instructional services and to you for arranging that.
So, yeah, thanks, Craig. And yeah, I really appreciated Aaron's presentation, and helpful for me as well, because I don't know about you, but I even find it challenging to remember what new curriculum is exactly coming in when has it all been implemented. So when you're not living it every single day, that gets to be challenging. So for trustees, it's really challenging. And I will say it's a great example of that sort of shifting role of governance. So when the curriculum's set, often as governors, you won't spend a whole bunch of time with curriculum, but when there's new curriculum that comes in, all of a sudden you have to become pretty knowledgeable about it and be able to answer questions or direct people in the right way. So yeah, it's always a little bit tricky. We'll keep going. Under wellness, under the second point, one of the things I wanted to highlight is nutrition funding. Anticipated that that's going to be spent. There was an announcement that just came out, I believe, yesterday about increased funding for that. So I don't know the details on it, but I just wanted to let you know that, and that's certainly exciting. Obviously needed. I look forward to a day that we don't need the nutrition grant in schools, and that's not something that we're doing, but we're certainly happy to support our communities and appreciative of the government to provide us with the funding to support that. So in terms of diversity, just wanted to go down to the last point there where it says Carmen, along with Jennifer Thompson, who's one of our learning support teachers, they've developed a newcomer guide for teachers for English as an additional language students. And really, it's not necessarily about the newcomer support guide, but just a reminder that you already know is that we are experiencing Lethbridge a big increase in additional English as an additional language families, and that's wonderful. We love having that as part of our division. I was walking down the hall today, and there was a couple families here doing some intake, and it's just awesome to see. But it's something that we're also going to need to really make sure that we're building capacity in the system over the coming years, because I suspect, might be wrong, I'm not an expert on demographics, but I suspect we're going to see this trend continue for a little while. And then priority leading learning and capacity building. I just wanted to give you a heads up on just if you could scroll down a little bit more, Kristen, that second bullet point that says Administrator PL will also be starting on February 29th. We have been doing professional learning as administrators, but not really focused on the classroom and instruction, that sort of thing. It's been more about what should our meeting structures look like and a variety of other things. And that was somewhat purposeful because we felt like at the end of the year, I remember in June there was a meeting where the professional learning committee was kind of going, well, what do we need to do? And because we have a professional learning symposium in September. And I said, well, what if we do something a little different in September and we spend some time talking about some of the things we do as administrators, our meeting structures, that sort of thing. You could see the weight kind of come off of them, because we felt like we needed to spend some time to talk with the administrators about what is it that you're looking for moving forward in terms of professional learning. So instead of just let's put something together and it would be good learning, but we wanted to be, I think, a little more grounded. And so I think it's going to be a little bit of a journey because everybody has a little bit of different needs. Elementary has different needs than high school, middle school has different needs, et cetera, et cetera. But assessment is going to be our overarching theme. And we think that that's going to give us a lot of opportunity to really dig down in some areas, including, our results through our diploma exams, PATs, F&P, those sorts of things. So we're excited about it. I know Aaron and the PL committee have been working on it. I don't know exactly what they have in store for us on Thursday. They were working on it last week and looked pretty exciting. So I'm excited for the journey. I think, will be some first tentative steps, but my hope is I also don't want us to be sort of fishtailing on professional learning where we're doing, this is our theme one year, and then the next year, this is our theme, and then the next year, this is our theme. And that's why I like having assessment as that overarching theme. We're going to spend some time and really dig down on assessment. So that's the plan. And then we'll just skip down to supporting learning and wellness, cross-ministry initiatives. Right at the end. It's right at the end, Kristen. Just wanted to highlight the Jordan's Principle. We did get some money from Jordan's Principle, so thank you to Morag and her team. Thank you to Christine and our finance team to kind of work with Jordan's Principle, and we have got some funding, and it's sort of a block funding, which we think is going to be a way that works really well for our division and allows us to serve our kids more effectively. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll have more details later on that, but just know that we're pleased with that, and it looks like it's an improvement in a way those funds and resources are going to be allocated to school divisions. So that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Jenny, go ahead.
I gotta go back and remember, we've covered so many things. The Learning Lab established at Dr. Plaxton Elementary. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? It sounds like a really great new initiative and would love to hear more details.
Yeah, Morag, do you want to start or you want me to? Okay. Yeah. And I know a little bit about it, but and can certainly get you a little more detail on that. But yeah, something that we're really excited. There's a bit of room in Dr. Plaxton, and the goal was just to give teachers a space and opportunity to try out some new things. You can bring classes in there. They can work with the lead teachers, that sort of thing. There's opportunities to collaborate. So that's kind of the theory there. And it's based right now, it's primarily focused on literacy, and it gives Jody an opportunity to be in schools and work directly with teachers.
So is it something that teachers from across the division go, this is a place that says where professional learning can happen for teachers. So is it somewhere that teachers from across the division are coming in to use this space? Do they kind of just book a time, or do they come on their own initiative? Or are we using this as part of our scheduled PL? What does this look like?
Yeah, good question. And my understanding is yes, the teachers from the division can access it. But what I will do is I'll confirm that because I don't know the nuts and bolts of that, and I know it's pretty new. So I'll make note of that, and I'll make sure that we get you a little more information on that, Jenny. Yeah, yeah, you bet.
Sorry, thank you.
No,
It
that's-
just seemed like a great initiative and would love to hear just some details.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I agree. I'm excited about it as well. So okay.
I have a couple of pieces. One is in Sarah is going to Zone 6, learning more about careers and trades. And I think hear from parents and families and students and their struggles with getting work experience. And I think just that piece to be able to connect with others across the zone is really important. The tech team, I see that they're doing 2 days of PD in March on various learning tools, as well as that focus on AI. As trustees, we certainly, AI impacts our boards, our divisions, and I think that it's really important that this work is being done, and it's exciting they know a lot. And so Mike's ready to talk. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I also know that you were interested in having our tech team come in and do some stuff on AI, and they just weren't able to. But I actually have a note because Jesse and I have talked about that, and I think he will be able to come. So that should be coming to either a committee of the whole or a board meeting. Committee of the whole might be a better format for that. But yeah, we know that's on. I literally wrote that down. That's on the list. Yeah.
And I'm good with either. I think that it is important that if it is for us to get more information at the committee of the whole, that also doing either a presentation at the board meeting or doing a presentation at DSC would be important. I just think that it's so new and there's so much information and it's a lot all at once, and you sometimes get lost in it. So I think that we have a lot of very smart staff within our division that know what they're doing with it. And I think just the pieces that can be passed on to us as trustees as we look forward to what policies we need to be developing, as well as to support our parents and families in our division. So that's really important. I also had nutrition funding on my list, but that was taken care of. Thank you, Mike. And then a question, or maybe just a comment in regards to the paired counseling model and the meeting with the elementary principals. So not necessarily a question, it's more just I think it's important to hear from the staff and the principals. And it really is one thing that as a trustee, I've certainly heard a lot about from the staff that are in the trenches. And I think it's important to know that that model is being reviewed and looked at what needs to be tweaked a little bit. So I think that it really is important the meetings with the principals, as well as ensuring that the staff that are in the trenches and dealing with it on a regular basis and the impact that has on our schools, with them going from school to school and what that means. So I think it's important to look at that piece. So it's not a question, it was just a comment. And then one thing that I loved that I saw under diversity piece was the interpreters for parent-teacher interviews. So I know last year, I think I was last year or the year before, and I was Nicholas Sharon School Council. I was their rep for trustees, and they used the ASCE grant to bring in an interpreter to when they did a session. And I think that it's just so important that we're acknowledging the diversity and some of those barriers that exist for people, for our parents and others that support our students to be able to participate in things that they might not otherwise be able to. So to see the removing some of those barriers by providing those interpreters is really important, and certainly would encourage that to continue. So thank you. That was all the comments that I had. Any others? Jenny?
I did have just one more of a comment than a question, but appreciating as we're talking about new curriculum implementation, and with that has come some new resources and manipulatives for teachers. And in here we have it noted that there's work being done to match some of those manipulatives with the new curriculum, and then videos are going to be following that, demonstrating how to use these. And that's something that we that we heard from Erin as well when she came and visited the board and talked to us about the curriculum in literacy as well. And just an appreciation for that strategy. And I don't know if it's a new strategy or if it's something that's been in place, but just a really great way to spread that knowledge with a limited resource in staffing, that we're able to get that information out to our teachers across the division in such an effective way. So appreciation for that strategy. I think that's a really great thing to be doing with those resources to make them effective in our classrooms.
Seeing no other comments or questions, we will move on. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
Jenny reminded me, and you probably read it in the Indigenous Education Report, but Oshana Christensen having made a video for a new curriculum from an Indigenous perspective for each lesson. So for people to be able to go to that bank of lessons, that's amazing. So shout out to Oshana.
Excellent, thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to donations and support.
Yeah, and I sound like a broken record every time, and I won't go through everything because I know you can read it all. But once again, we're just so fortunate in this division, and I'm going to say this virtually every time, but it's genuine. It's not. It's just the truth of the matter. And the fact that we can every single board meeting have a bunch of different donations on here every single time, that just speaks to for just how generous our community is. So very, very fortunate. Yeah, that's it for that one. Unless there's questions.
So next is acknowledgement of excellence.
Yeah, and again, I won't go through everything, just hit a couple of highlights. Certainly, if you know Lakeview Elementary, there's two things that stand out. One is a real emphasis, and this is new and certainly something that Connie brought with her, that emphasis on being outside, outdoor learning, getting outside, being active, and the connection to learning. That's something that I know she's very passionate about, and has worked really hard and will continue to work really hard to make that as part of what Lakeview does. So appreciate that work. No, it's exciting. No, the kids certainly enjoy it. And sometimes on days like today, they might not enjoy being outside quite as much, but I think usually when they get out there and they get playing, they have a pretty good time. And then, her last point, the last point there, how we express immense gratitude for the unwavering support and collaboration from our vibrant community. That's so true. That's the other thing that really stands out about Lakeview is just that community support, community involvement. It's always been part of Lakeview, always will be. And so it's a really nice combination. And the outdoors and being active is a great way to engage your community as well. So the two things work really well together. Pretty cool. And then Gilbert Patterson, I mean, the first thing that jumps out at you, 830 students. That was a community that grade 6 was hopping this year at Gilbert Patterson. We'd put in a teacher and then all of a sudden we'd need another one. It was not sure exactly why the demographics worked out that way, and the staff just rolled with it and did their absolute best. So really appreciate that. And it's always exciting to see a school growing like that, but it also creates challenges and stresses. And then I won't go through each of the points in here, but boy, you take a look at the data that we get, and it talks about all the time, especially at middle school. If you look at our assurance result, we always get pretty good marks, our pretty good results on opportunities and programming and that sort of thing. If you look at the town hall data, especially at middle school, you see that really jump out as a positive, that the programs, the extra opportunities, and then you read through Gilbert Patterson and you see it right here. Like how many kids are engaged in a whole bunch of different activities. 300 students in band, 70 students in a drama production. And then there's a bunch of students that are in, we've got, climbers, and we've got all sorts of things in here. Just really a great example of the options and that sort of thing. I think that middle schools and Lethbridge School Division in particular, all of our schools, but middle schools in particular do really well with their programming and giving kids just as many opportunities, both in the classroom day curricularly, but also outside. So yeah, really appreciate the work they're doing, and puts a fine point on what we heard at town hall and what we see in our results for sure.
Excellent. Craig.
Yeah, because I'll have trouble pronouncing it, but could you just share with the public that last paragraph from Gilbert Patterson? the full paragraph, not we're very proud of our taggers, but I think that's important to recognize.
Sure. So
Gracia.
finally, we are excited to share that our grade 8 student, Garcia, I'm not sure how to say Garcia's last name. Gracia, sorry. There you go. Yeah. Aspian Flamont First Rider is the 2023-24 Junior Sixatapi Princess for the province of Alberta. That was perfect Blackfoot, by the way, so I'm sure Joel will give me full marks for that. It's Gracia. Gracia, yeah, sorry, is an accomplished jingle dancer, singer, and speaker. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, just what a great example, right? And sorry for butchering some of the names in there, but.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments or questions, we'll move on to calendar of events.
Great. And I traditionally don't talk much about the calendar of events. If there's anything you want to add in there, but I think for the most part you can read it and you know what's coming up. Next couple of weeks, I was looking at my March calendar and it's like, whoa, this got really busy really fast. A lot of big things going on. ICE scholarship, yeah. Budget, yeah.
So Craig, go ahead.
Just a reminder that in the during March, and I'd have to go, but if you go on to SEAC or Southern Alberta, we have teams that will be involved in zone playoffs, and that'll be middle school and our grade 9s maybe, and our high school teams, Emmanuel Christian, Winston Churchill, LCI, and Chinook. So they're all involved in and I know that they'd appreciate if people would come out and watch them play.
I have a couple that I think are not on there, and Andrea can help me out on Friends of 51 on March 19th. That's okay. Is that, Christina, you're on that as well? Okay, that's okay. So March 19th, 11 is the Friends of 51 meeting. And then somebody can correct me, but I have new teacher induction for the ATA on March 21st. Is that correct? At 4 o'clock? And then I have March 27th from 1 to 2:30 board budget committee meeting, March 27th from 1 to 2:30. I think that's all that I have to add. We're good? Perfect. So next is Town Hall. Mike.
More of me. I'll keep the comments relatively brief. First thing I wanted to say is thank you to the trustees for your participation that night and being there and being really engaged. Greatly appreciated. Thank you to all the people in the Ed Center who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen that evening. Thank you to the community who just came out in absolute droves, huge numbers. That was just incredible to see. And I think that was my favorite part of the evening was just, that's the Lethbridge School Division community, right? We had a couple hours together, a whole bunch of people with diverse perspectives talking about education. So that was really good. And we've got, you know, Sharon and I have been combing through 1,600 plus responses that we had. So, and we've, you know, there are definitely, as the board knows, because you've seen some of that, there are some themes that really emerge. So I think there's going to be some good actionable items that come out of this. Some of it will be things we can do right away. Some of it, bell times, for example, are things that we have to look at down the road. But I think there's lots of good feedback that'll help us for our strategic planning. And Garrett and I are putting the finishing touches on the data to be released out to the public next week. It's pretty close. It's really just getting it in a format now that makes sense. And, you know, when somebody looks at it, because there's going to be a fair bit there. We're going to, you know, you try not to give too much information, but there's a lot to cover there. So, yeah. Yeah, so I just want to say, biggest thing I wanted to say is just thank you everybody who did so much to make that a wonderful night. Always lots of room for improvement, but I think lots of successes that evening as well.
For sure. Andrea.
Thank you so much to you and your team for that organization. Even the little placards in the middle of the table where you took it off. And then, oh, now I'm at a new table. Like that was so well organized and so well thought out. So thank you very much. And I really enjoyed getting to spend time with a former kindergarten child at my table and hear her perspective now as a grade fiver. And it was just sweet. It was like out of the mouths of babes, like we need more play as it moves up through your learning. And I think I just loved hearing that perspective. So thank you for all that organization.
Christina.
Yeah, I want to echo Andrea. Thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with so many people and thoughtful questions, and for taking the feedback about wanting to speak in different age group divisions. That was important feedback that we heard from lots of different areas last year, over the last couple of years. So thank you for tackling it. That's a hard thing to conceptualize. So I appreciate the effort, and thank you so much for including grade fives. Students are always, for me, the best part of town hall. We always hear about what youth want, but to hear it from them directly and to give them equal opportunity to speak alongside educators, parents, community members is extremely valuable to me. And the inclusion of grade fives this year puts it over the top for me. Young people are so capable of speaking on their own behalf, and giving someone from elementary school the opportunity to do so is invaluable feedback for me as a board member. We all engage with young people all the time, but to give them the formal opportunity. I remember one of my most defining moments as a young person was when my soccer coach when I was in middle school shook my hand like I was a grown up, right? Saying we value you and you're as important as adults in the conversation about your own education is so critical. And so thank you so much for making that work. And I know that there's often some trepidation around grade fives or elementary school, they're in their little elementary bubble and how are they going to do out in the community? And I think they handled themselves so well. They did so great and provided meaningful feedback. So thank you to everyone who facilitated that. And thank you to the families and the grade fives themselves who came out, and all the students of all ages. So thanks.
Craig.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think for me, the highlight too was sitting at a table and talking about governance, and the people are engaged in that and they're concerned, and so it's good to get that feedback. I just want to highlight one. I was at a table doing the future of education, and I have to give kudos to Victoria Park. The student that was at my table was just unbelievable. And he talks about all the things that they do at that school that are just unique to that school. The fact that kids can take driver training and with a volunteer and learn how to get their driver's licenses. And he just said that the teachers there take the time to understand us as individuals. And he came from a different school. He didn't say which one. I'm not going to mention it even if he did, but the fact that we have a program in this division that reaches the needs of those students and makes them successful in the world, I can't give enough credit to Victoria Park and their staff.
Appreciate that, and yeah, certainly agree with that, and pass that on. So also I forgot to mention one group specifically. I forgot to mention our school-based administrators who came and were facilitators, and just do it willingly. And we're I'm like, yeah, this is going to be organizationally it might be a little tricky, and you're going to have to be flexible, and they just were, and they kind of went with the flow, and so really appreciated that. And also the 3-card thing, I have to give Kristen credit. That was her idea, and we were standing in the gym before. We had sort of a plan, but we're looking at it going, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off. And Kristen said, why don't we just do this? And I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. And that's what we did, and certainly helped make the evening work a little more effectively. So thanks, Kristen.
And I'll just add my 2 cents in regards to town hall. I think in addition to all the kudos that have been given, I heard lots of great, wonderful feedback of having the separate tables, as well as the ability for people to choose which table that they were going to. They very much felt that it was honored who they were and what their comfort level was. And to see and hear that from people that felt good coming was great. So I think that there's lots to learn from what we did this last year and things that we can use going forward. And I would just encourage those that are watching and that did attend that when the results come out, to make sure that you take time to take a look at those, because you heard what was said at your table, but there's also lots more that was said at other tables. So, and you'll hear in our next agenda item in regards to part of how we use town hall, but it is important and valuable information as trustees that we use as we move forward in our planning for the next school year and for future school years. So it is valuable to have everybody come that did come and participate. So thank you. So seeing no other comments, I do need to go back quickly to calendar of events, and I wouldn't highlight it, but it is big because it's about the board meeting on the 26th. So our board meeting on the 26th is not at 2 o'clock. So our board meeting starts at 1 o'clock for the in-camera and at 2:30 for the regular board meeting. So I just want to ensure that that is highlighted on there as corrected. It's 2:30 for regular board meeting. So perfect. And next we will jump to board strategic planning retreat, and I'll turn it over to Mike to start.
Yeah, and I'll be relatively quick. I've been spamming the inboxes of trustees with various information. Before we get to the day, I'll try and sum it all up for you. But yeah, really looking forward to our strategic planning on March 7th and 8th. We will spend time on the assurance framework, making sure we understand what that looks like and then what our role is within that. Definitely spending time on town hall data. I know you have a bunch of that information, so you're already working on that, but we'll definitely spend some time on that. And then really looking at what are sort of our priorities and really trying to see if we can focus a bit. What are some short-term things that we need to be looking at, and what are some longer-term things that we need to be looking at? So yeah, that's it for me, unless there's questions.
And I'll always add to this piece in regards to the board strategic planning is that us being prepared when we come to board strategic planning is so very important to us actually having time to have engaging conversations. Mike and his executive council have allowed and ensured that on the agenda there is lots of time for us to be having those conversations that we need to have. But if you don't come prepared, we're not able to have those conversations in the same way. So Mike has already sent us some information, and he'll highlight whether you need to read it in full or whether, just skimming it and understanding the document is good. So please take the time over this next week. I have requested that the majority of the information be provided to us prior to the weekend so that we do have that, just respecting trustees' time, that the weekend is important for you to have time to be able to prep and get ready. But as trustees, this is one of your big roles of coming together and being able to share and bring your perspective to the table. So it is a day and a half, very full. Mike is going to send out updated times, and it is important that we start on time, and we'll respect the end time as well. But we got lots of work to do, and Mike and his team will bring us lots of information, but it's what you guys bring to the table for those 2 days that is important for this division. So, Craig.
Yeah, just a question, because sometimes I forget. Do we have a paper copy of the assurance plan that we submitted, or are you going to supply it to us via email?
We are going to put it in the binders. I have provided to you via email, but it's actually, I emailed you it was Monday night, last night. The assurance results report, that was an attachment. And then I tried to attach the assurance plan, but it was too large. So I just put a link in it so you can click on the link, but we'll have that in your binder as well for the session.
So if we wanted to get access to that before that, we could come by the office and pick it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can just, it's not hard to print you a copy.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? So with that, we'll move on to action items. 10.1 is policy review. And Jenny, you're up.
Thank you. So we have a policy. This is kind of an exciting moment because this is a policy that was able to go through our new website webpage for policy feedback and has fully gone through that process and come back to us again. So this is an exciting time for us to be able to see that initiative and that work effective and um, see the way that it is influencing what we're doing here, and we appreciate that feedback. So we had good engagement through that website. We had 73 responses to it and went through them all as a policy review committee and considered the perspectives and looked at the policy and made some amendments to bring for you today to consider. So as we look at this one, as we look at school choice 501.3.1, you'll see there's things that are in green and things that are underlined in red. And the green is the first amendments that were done. And then the additional amendments are in the red. So that being said, we will go through that one as well as have a discussion about 600.1. So do you want me to go ahead with that? Excellent. Okay. So we'll just go through the changes that were made here. So do you want me to go through both the red and the green probably? Yeah. Okay. I'll go ahead with that. Okay, so under policy in the preamble there, we have students residing in the attendance area for a school will be admitted into the school. Requests being made to attend a school outside of the designated attendance area is referred to as school choice. So the intention there was to give definition to what, because this policy is titled school choice, was to give definition to what that is. And then you'll see as we continue down, we added the words in accordance with the regulations noted below. The first regulation has been removed and moved up to, that's that same sentence that you see under the heading policy. And then the words choice of school were changed to school choice to keep consistency. We removed the word only and we I'm not sure what happened with or there. We maybe originally removed it and then put it back in. I'm not sure what happened there. I do know we debated a comma is maybe what happened there, but what we added was the words or when student programming requires. And as we move into the next area there, we added the words eligibility for early childhood services. And to name the policy, previously it just had the number listed, so we added the name of the policy being referred to add to clarity. And then as we continue on down here in 3.1.2.1, the words were added. So decision shall be based on, and the words the following were added, and established and including were removed. We removed the word ability of and added capacity of resources and removed space. So previously it said the ability of space and now says the capacity of resources. We added the words sustainability of school programs and services and removed the words for that student class composition. As we continue down, there was the removal of the words sustainability of school programs and services for that student, the removal of additional costs to the school and or division. In 3.2.2.2, we removed the title student services and updated that title as inclusive education, so director of inclusive education. We added the words access a program outside their attendance area and removed at to a school other than the school in their attendance area. We have removed to the superintendent whose decision shall be final, and the words for the process identified in, and instead it now reads, decisions by the principal may be appealed per policy and procedure 505.1, appeals concerning student matters, to clean up the language and to refer to the proper policy that would be followed in that instance. And then we removed number 4, students living in the attendance area will be admitted to into the school. And that was established at the beginning of the policy. So as we move on to school choice continued, in 5.3, we removed enrollment is high in any given year and changed it to resources are near capacity, thereby limiting additional enrollment. We added the words outside the attendance area. And then we updated, we clarified by adding the word division to refer to the students. So division students for each of the subsequent statements. And then we, in 5.4.3.4, division students, we removed the words are special and replaced them with the words merit consideration. Again, we added the word division, and we removed the word City of Lethbridge and changed it to division's catchment area. And we have removed the words number of available spaces and replaced them with the words capacity of resources, and added the word typically. So the applications will typically be approved was added there. And then in the references, we updated the Alberta School Act to read the Education Act and added in the appropriate sections that this refers to. Also in the title, we caught a spelling error and fixed that as well. We've removed an S.
Okay.
So I
Questions
open that
or
up for
comments?
questions, comments.
Tyler.
Did a great job explaining that. However, did an even better job with the policy, the way it's laid out with the red and the green and everything. So sometimes we have 10, 12 policies that we're doing in a session. I think it would be way better if you didn't have to explain every change that you made. I think the trustees, if you need to read it before you come, it's super clearly laid out. You've done a great job. I know what's crossed out. I know what's renumbered. So I hope that going forward, I would just be my request of the board is that we don't have to read every change that happened, because I think it's perfectly laid out. And in that regard, there's one thing for me under regulations, number 1, renumbered number 1. When I read that, I think there you're talking about the timing of the school choice. So when that school choice can happen. The way it reads to me when I read it is school choice shall normally be permitted. So it sounds like we're going to permit school choice between semesters or between schools. So I think maybe there should be something there at the start that says timing of, something like that, because I think it's more the timing. When you read it under because there's nothing really ahead of it either. When you just read this, it just kind of says school choice shall be permitted between school years. So, okay. Or something like that. I think there should be some caveat there that says if we're granting school choice, this is the timing of it.
I think that's a really good point. Also, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, what I just said makes no sense to anyone not following along it. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. If we've read it, we have it. I don't probably need to, unless there's a question about it, which we'll ask the question and then I'll go through it. I think that's a really great point. Would it satisfy that point if we changed it from permitted to be considered? Because we're talking about the timing of when the school choice being considered. I would throw that suggestion out there that school choice shall normally be considered between school years or semesters, high school, or when student programming requires?
Morag's thinking.
Certainly open to suggestions. There's one.
Number one. Just hang on. Mike's unclear.
I have Mike's missing which point we're at.
So number one, where it says school choice in green, and then it says normally be permitted. So
Gotcha. Okay.
be permitted. So instead of permitted, you wanted considered. Morag.
So I think we always do consider, right? The consideration piece doesn't necessarily have a time on it. It is the permitted or the actual operation of doing it or implementing the decision. I think permitted is a fair term.
What if we said change of school choice shall normally be permitted?
About access
Okay.
to a school of choice.
Sure. Access
Access to a school of choice.
access
that's what they're
to
trying to
a
do, right?
School. Well, it's sure access to a school of choice. We use school choice like a title.
Make sure you turn on your mic, Tyler.
So what if you say change to school choice shall normally be permitted?
Morag.
Because normally is not typical. It's about, well, yeah, I guess it is about the consideration piece. So I value that, Jenny, right? Like we receive many different requests throughout the year to change schools based upon choice. I don't think it's fair to limit parents to advocate for a school choice at different times of the year. So we always consider, and I mean, maybe it's just more of typically school choice can be permitted between school years or between semesters.
Typically.
Typically, school choice can be permitted between school years or semesters. Again, but then that's pending all of the conditions of it, right? Whether we have resources or not.
Christine.
Would it work to say timing of implementing school choice shall normally be permitted?
Jenny.
Implementation of school choice shall normally be permitted, because you're right, you can
Yes.
you
the
can always
implementation of.
consider
Yeah.
and the conversation happens through the year, but implementation, that shortens it.
Okay, so Jenny, you want to read what it'll be changed to?
Thank you, Christine. Implementation of school choice shall normally be permitted between school years or semesters, high school, or when student programming requires. And I think it's important to remember that we added a definition of what school choice is. So that helps clarify that statement as well.
So other comments on the changes, the amendments? Craig.
Mike knows what I'm going to say. This, other than the first paragraph, really this is a procedure. The board doesn't get involved with the choice of schools. That goes through administration. So really what we're talking about is more of a procedure than a policy. I can agree with the first part that students residing in attendance area for school will be admitted into the school and request, but the regulations, there's more about the implementation or the day-to-day operation of the division and not something that the governors are involved in. So I look at this as more of a procedure than a policy. So that would be my, and Mike knows my stance on that too, so.
Andrea.
How does this relate to our specialty programs, like the Spanish and French and Montessori? How, like, does that need to be put in here so that,
Okay, Morag, you're shaking your head. Can you provide a bit more information for clarification?
Well, those are school choice programs, right? The Montessori, Spanish bilingual, French immersion. But again, any program, one typically can be considered for, but there are different measures of acceptance for those programs as well, right? So French language acquisition, all of those pieces. So there's some other trump cards above and beyond that, but we would be considering or using those considerations for any program.
so if I was starting a kindergarten child out in French language learning, would I also have to go through this policy? No. But if I was changing partway through, this policy would apply. Okay, that helps.
Just a
clarify it.
reminder, Morag, to turn on your mic when you're talking. So her
Yes,
first,
Allison.
her first answer was no, her second answer was yes. So
And Jenny, could you read that sentence back again? Sorry. The sentence.
Oh,
that-
yes, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
This is the new number 1 under regulations. Implementation of school choice shall normally be permitted between school years or semesters, high school, or when student programming requires.
and Morag, operationally, you're good with that? Okay, Jenny.
Just a response to Craig's comment there. So in considering that, I look at 2.3, decisions by the principal may be appealed per policy and procedure 505.9, appeals concerning student matters. So because this ultimately comes back to division office, would this then lend itself to be policy rather than procedure? Because it's something that can be appealed back to division level. I would suggest it is a policy.
If it's appealable, it would need to be a policy. You can't appeal a procedure. So, Christina.
And actually, that was going to be where I was going. So if you add in the new 2.3, so decisions made by the principal may be appealed per the policy procedure or the policy 505.9. That changes the process quite substantially, actually, because previously this policy said that it would stop at the superintendent, and this policy refers to being able to appeal the superintendent's decision to the board. So that would theoretically open school choice requests to be appealable to the board per that policy. So I think what we actually intend, like if we intend for it to stop at the division office because it's not a governance decision, then I think it would actually just be the 1003.1, the channels of communication, which outlines what you can bring for appeal anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
Mike.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We actually got legal on this school choice, and legal said, no, you really can't do that because you really need to follow your appeal process because it is an educational matter that I can't remember the exact wording that it impacts potentially substantially impacts a child's education.
Oh,
Because
100%, yeah.
It's a great point. Yeah. And I think Craig's point is a really good one too, because I would agree this is a great example of a policy that does straddle the line between policy and procedure. You know, and I think you're exactly right as well, because it is potentially appealable to the board. I think it's important for the board to say, here are some of the expectations, but you're exactly right, Craig. You read through the regulations and they're very procedure-like, no doubt about it. And so it just kind of depends on what your view on it is. And I think it's probably appropriate to say, yeah, as a board, here's the things we're expecting principals to do. And if it does become an appeal to us, that's the first thing we're going to take a look at. Did you look at X, Y, and Z?
Tyler.
Glad you got a legal opinion on that, because otherwise I was going to say we need this to stop at the superintendent. I don't want to be making that decision. So I'm glad they did that. No. Yeah. Oh, actually, the good news is I won't be here next time it comes up, so I don't have to remember it. I won't have to remember it for next time. But yeah, that's good. I was just going to say I think it's more of a procedure anyway, just because we're defining our rules on what as a board, we believe your school choice can be and how it's going to happen. But I think we've all come to the conclusion we're good there. So.
And I'll just add my 2 cents in regards to the Tyler and Jenny comments about you reading everything. I think it is, with having it here and it's very clear, trustees are expected to have read things. So I think that that's important. One thing that I would appreciate as a trustee is if there was points where you thought, the committee had more comments or more discussion on, or things that were just providing us a little bit more information if there was pieces that stood out more for you or that the committee struggled with, would be important for me as a trustee to have that information that I wouldn't have had if I wasn't at policy advisory committee. But I'm totally fine with it that trustees are to come to the board meeting prepared and will have read it, and it would be more just highlighting if there's specific areas versus we changed an or to an or with a comma. So perfect. Mike. Oh,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify your request. So are you looking for just kind of a summary of some of the rationale discussion for some of the reasons some of the changes were made?
If they were ones that were
significant,
right, or substantive, had some debate on it,
for sure,
versus one that if it was clear that, all the feedback was this, great. If there's ones where you're like, oh, there was a couple of pieces or it went this way and that way and it came back to this way, those little bit of tidbits that, because you were at the meeting, you're able to share with us, and you've reviewed the information that comes from our website feedback tool, that you're able to provide anything without us having to all go through that information.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple things. Actually, that's a nice segue. One of the conversations we had at the end, the Education Act, there's a bunch of areas listed there, and we probably don't need to include 31 in there. That's students' responsibilities, and it's sort of tangentially related, but it's not that closely related. So we probably should have just crossed that one out. The other ones are probably appropriate for this particular policy, but that one. And then the other thing, that first sentence, students residing in the attendance area for a school will be admitted into the school. As you can see, that was crossed out a number of times and showed up in a number of different places in the policy. We had a lot of conversation about that, and I'm not even 100% sure if we agreed that we were going to be keeping that in or not. There was a real debate back and forth on that. Kelsey and I were talking about that before the meeting, was, because we spent a fair bit of time on that, and the Coles Notes version, and Jenny can add to it if she'd like. The Coles Notes version of why we were debating that is not that that's not important. That statement is important, but is it appropriate for this policy, because this is a school choice policy? It doesn't really have anything to do with attendance areas. So the real debate was, do we keep it in there because it's sort of clear to principals so they know that students residing in the attendance area get that first priority, or should it just be out of there because it really isn't school choice? School choice is when you're out of the catchment, you know what I mean, to just clean it up a little bit. So if anybody, Jenny, hopefully I capture that, and if anybody has opinions, be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, kind of the two sides of that were, as Mike captured, is for some people it was important that we establish that baseline of this is the standard. Don't worry, you're all coming to school. And then there was also the perspective that it's a little bit confusing because this policy is specifically about those applying to be attending a school outside of their catchment area. And so, yeah, I would welcome thoughts around that, because we kind of went back and forth on that one quite a bit, and it got moved around, and ultimately ended up in the preamble at the beginning of the policy, but would welcome thoughts on that for sure. Thank you, Mike.
Comments on that? Craig?
I would agree that this is talking school choice, not about the catchment area. So really, that residing in the attendance area for a school will be admitted into the school. We don't need that, because we're really just talking about students that, for instance, want to go from LCI to Winston Churchill, and they're not in the catchment, or Winston to LCI or to Chinook. Other than that, everybody knows where they're going to school. So I would eliminate that part and just go, requests being made to attend a school outside of a designated area is referred to as school choice. I mean, I think that just cleans it up.
Am I seeing consensus? to remove that. Tyler.
I see both sides of that one, honestly. I'm just thinking of a school like Colbanks, where there's just so many kids that people want to go there. They want to be in the Spanish program or something like that. So they think, oh, okay, well, school choice, I'm going to go there. So if I read that, does it set my expectations ahead of time that, look, the people who live there in the catchment area get first dibs. And then from there, I have school choice. I don't have school choice anywhere because some of the catchment areas are full. So I totally agree that, yeah, it's not necessarily part of this policy, but I can see, yeah, both sides of that. So I'm not sure.
I like it
Andrea?
left in because it sets the stage for what you're looking at, and it gives the parents who live in that area, if should they look at it, the chance to know that yes, my child will go there. I live here. My child will go there. I would like to see it left in that statement.
And I think I support leaving it in as well. I think that we as governors read this and know that there's another policy to go look at to find that. As somebody just looking at a policy to try to understand school choice, this makes it clear. And they don't have to go to another policy to see that if you're in the attendance area you're in, it's clearly laid out there. So I am good with it staying in. Jenny?
The way it is written, so you look up, I want to go to a different school, and the first thing you're told is students residing in an attendance area for school will be admitted into the school. It sounds like there's no choice. So it doesn't say will be allowed to be admitted. It says they will be admitted, as if they are automatically admitted. And really, I mean, is that the way it is? I'm not sure. It's a little bit contradictory to the policy saying there is a consideration for people wanting to attend a school outside of their admittance area.
And I don't necessarily think that it needs to be up top where it is, but I do think that it needs to be easily accessible to know that information. Christine?
Yeah. Which Christine? Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought you moved your hand. Sorry. It might be clearer if you keep the first sentence and then says, a request may be made to attend school. So it says you are designated to a school and that's where you go. But the second sentence, a request may be made. And that might make it maybe clearer linking those two sentences together.
Mike?
Yeah. And just to add context so the board is aware of this, in 10 section 3 of the Education Act, that's where this comes from. It says where a board establishes an attendance area for a school, a resident student of a board who resides in the attendance area for the school must be given priority over a student who does not reside in the attendance area. So that's partially, it doesn't really make a difference one way or another if we keep it in because it's in the Education Act, but just so you know, that's where that sentence sort of comes from.
Jenny, how are you feeling?
As it's written, it's not a true statement. Students residing in the attendance area for a school will be admitted into the school. But they are sometimes, exactly.
Actually, turn on your mic, please.
So it's
Tyler.
not true because that's the whole point of this policy is this is the except for policy, right? This is the policy for the students who do not reside in the school where their attendance area is.
Morag?
There's just one trump card, well, two trump cards, I guess. One is expulsion committee recommendations that would no longer allow for the student to attend their neighborhood school. And then as well, legal issues around no contact or no-go school orders. So I think we cannot say all the time they will be admitted. That's just my thought.
Okay. With 5 minutes to 5, I know that we're not going to get this done in this time, so I would actually like to call a recess at 4:55 with us returning at 5 o'clock for public forum. So please take a 5-minute break, and after public forum, we'll get back to this agenda item. Thanks. Again with the meeting. So we're coming out of recess at 5:02. I understand that we have public forum representatives potentially online, and then we have public forum representatives here in the room. So we have 15 minutes total. So before we get started on public forum presentations, I would like to understand who's online and what they would like to present if they are interested in presenting. So if I can have Amy and Serena, are you interested in presenting during this public forum time?
Hi there. Yes, I'm Serena and this is Amy. We have children in several schools in the district. We would support Amber and Mary, who I believe they're in person, and support them to speak first. And then afterwards, we would have an opportunity to support and or rebut. That'd be great.
Okay, and then Kaz, are you interested in speaking during public forum time?
We are here to support Amber, is that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're here to support Amber, and also we may speak after if we would like to comment.
Okay, we'll need to know at this time if you're going to be speaking or not, just because we have 15 minutes total. So are you wanting to be included in that 15 minutes to speak?
No, we'll let her speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And then we have 3 separate speakers in the room. So in total, we'll have 4 participants coming up, and you can go together if what you wish. So Christine, how many? Close enough. 4 minutes each. 4 minutes each for each grouping. Go ahead, Amy and Serena.
I was actually just going to say that we are happy to give our 8 minutes or 4 minutes to Amber and Mary, who are there in person. So thank you.
Okay, so each group will get 5 minutes. So we'll have Nicole go first with 5 minutes, and then Viviana with 5 minutes, and then Amber for 5 minutes, and that will be our 15 minutes of public forum time. Okay, so Nicole, you're good to come up to the front, please.
Hello? Is it on? Wait, and let me know when my. Okay.
Yeah, and I can. So thank you for taking the time to join the public forum and present to the board. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective. The board will listen carefully to your presentation and carefully consider what you have said today. The board will not be providing a response or engaging dialogue following your presentation. We will have, however, provide a written response in the near future. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay. First, on page 77 in the January 2024 Board of Trustee regular meeting agenda, paragraph 5 reads, best practice in public secular organizations is to update language when possible. To me, this implies that our Alberta education system is secular. I think it's important to note that according to alberta.ca, the Choice in Education Act strengthens Alberta's successful history of educational choice, including public, separate, francophone charter, independent private schools, early childhood education, and home education. Second, I'd like to talk about anti-oppression, which is related to Lethbridge School Division's newest educational philosophy policy that the board voted unanimously in favor of. According to an article in Femme magazine, our contemporary normalized conception of gender is binary, consisting of man and woman. In this view, gender is strict, immutable, and essentialist. You must either be a man or a woman, and that is inextricably linked to your biological characteristics. Although the notion of gender being a fluid social construct distinct from sex has become more widely accepted, the imposition of the gender binary permeates our everyday lives in more ways than we might think, including the way we view sex as a binary. By understanding the origins of the gender binary as a tool of oppression, we can more clearly see the ways in which it not only restricts human potential, but also reinforces constructed hierarchies. Lethbridge School Division's Guidelines Attending to Gender Identity defines gender identity as a personal, deeply felt sense of being male, female, both, neither, or something else. Western culture has moved to a position where external authorities, external realities, even our own bodies have to give way to psychological feelings. Over the last couple hundred years, we've become increasingly preoccupied with our inner feelings and inner space as being foundational to who we are. Sigmund Freud influenced making sexuality a core identity. A lot of people today have bought into this idea, not even realizing it came from Freud, where whatever I feel sexually is my core identity. For example, if a young child goes to his parents and says, "Dad, I think I'm gay," we know the child may not actually be making any statement about any sexual experience or sexual activity they've ever had or engaged in. The child is identifying himself relative to the direction of his sexual desires. I think it's fair to say there's been a shift in authority, whereas we no longer go outside of ourselves to find what is true and real, but we now go inside of ourselves to what we believe to be our core identity. Rules and regulations that corral or inhibit our feelings or who we feel we are seen as oppressive because they become rules about who you're allowed to be in society. Students who practice celibacy used to be called prudes. Today, they are the oppressors who are opposed to sexual liberation. In modern society, people demand to have others affirm them as who they feel they are. And so it is in this context I can understand why many people perceive Premier Smith's proposed gender policies as a direct attack on the 2S LGBTQIA community. For example, on February 9th, 2024, during a CTV News interview, the president of the ATA said that he felt this is one big policy package that's directed towards some of the most marginalized students we have in our schools. And we have these policies to look to limit their rights and their ability to live their true self. We are talking about a really nuanced, complex, very private moment when a student is struggling with their own identity and their orientation. I'm here today to say to this board, I support the government requiring parental notification and consent for minors 15 and under to alter their names or pronouns, otherwise referred to as social transitioning. Dr. Kenneth Zucker, a Toronto psychologist who led the Child, Youth, and Family Gender Identity Clinic for decades, calls social transitioning a psychosocial intervention with likely consequence of subsequent lifelong biomedical treatments like gender-affirming hormonal treatment and surgery. He argues it's an intervention often conducted by schools and other institutions unqualified to implement such a course of treatment. In 2014, the American Psychological Association warned, premature labeling of gender identity should be avoided, and early social transition should be approached with caution to avoid foreclosing this stage of gender identity development. Dr. Hilary Cass, former president of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, has warned that social transition is not a neutral act, but an active intervention because of the profound impact it has on a child's psychology. Finally, I'd like to quote Dr. Stephen Levine, who's a clinical professor of psychiatry at Case Western Reserve University and Distinguished Life Fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. He founded the Case Western Gender Identity Clinic in 1974 and has served as co-director since that time. Dr. Levine has treated transgender identifying individuals for 50 years. He's an outspoken critic of the immediate social affirmation of what could be a young person's temporary identity. On social transitioning, Dr. Levine says, with rare exception, educators do not have the professional training required and experience necessary to guide children and parents through the difficult and potentially life-altering decisions surrounding social transition to transgender identity.
Sorry, Nicole, your time's up.
Thank you, Nicole. On behalf of the board, thank you for your presentation. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective. You can be assured the board will carefully consider what you have said today and provide a response in the near future. Thank you, Nicole. Viviana. So Viviana, you as well will have the 5 minutes, and that's the same words as I've just said. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm here to address an item on the agenda of today's board meeting that is of great concern for me. In particular, this is Trustee Larkin's report on her professional development in Ever Active Schools Shaping the Future conference that she attended. I wanted to note there are 3 things in which she referred to as her reasons for attending. Number 1, I will quote, my responsibilities on the Wellness Committee. Number 2, areas of feedback I often receive around student, staff, and system well-being. And number 3, the board value of well-being. I have several questions and some concerns that I would like to express today, in which Trustee Larkin, I'm hoping you can possibly consider, and all the board members here consider as well. First question is the information that you had gleaned from this retreat or from this conference. I'm curious to know what you will do with that information exactly. What are you planning for implementing in the future? What do you expect the wellness can result of this information? And how are you putting my tax dollars to good use by engaging in this type of activity? How does engaging in this type of learning make you a better trustee and a better governor? I'm still not quite clear as to how this kind of professional development is going to better you as a trustee and as a governor. Next, in your report, in the Nurture Relationships and Transform Your School Community section, you state, in order to be successful at work, staff need to feel safe, cared for, and emotionally connected to their students. My question to you is, or to the committee, to the whole board, why do grown adults need to be emotionally connected to children that they are not the parent of in order to complete the tasks as teacher, staff, administrator effectively? It is my perspective schools are not places where grown adults should be getting their, as the French say, raison d'être, the reason for being. My child is not at school to fulfill the needs of grown adults. My child is not responsible for a grown adult to feel safe, cared for, and certainly not to be emotionally connected to. This is borderline grooming. If staff need to feel safe, that is the responsibility of the administration team and the trustees. If they need to feel cared for, emotionally connected, children are not to be the target to fulfill those needs. This is quite concerning to me. Thirdly, following that, in the section that states what 2S LGBTQ plus youth mental and physical health means at different ages, so G123, in that section of your report, you state ages appropriate examples, junior high school, high middle school, identity navigation, sports inclusion, school awareness, not involvement of puberty blockers, sports inclusion. This is a statement I find incredibly concerning. When an entity such as a school is involving themselves in creating awareness of any topic, by de facto, the school is becoming involved. Schools are not medical clinics. Teachers, staff, administrators are not medical professionals. Creating awareness on the subject matter of puberty blockers is inappropriate for any school or the division to be involved in. Inclusivity is not a inclusivity is not a carte blanche that allows a school or school division to bring in any topic they wish at the behest of certain identity groups. Schools are educational institutions. They are to provide students with the skills to read, write, do math, and think analytically. You are not medical experts. Fourthly, from the section called Seizing the Magical Opportunity of School as a Place of Healing, I believe this was the EndNote speaker. There is a statement there, schools must take action on the truth and reconciliation calls, etc. Sorry, I misquoted this. Right, schools must take action on the truth and reconciliation calls to action and not only be aware of the actions required, but why each one is listed. Indigenous students have a right to access in all schools. Again, when did schools become, why are Indigenous students only highlighted here? I believe access to schools is for all children. Lastly, there are many items in this report that I haven't touched on that are a great concern of mine. I don't have enough time to get to the rest of it, but I'm left with two questions to ask the board. Why does the school division continue to entertain and bring in identity politics into the school and classrooms? Why are you using my tax dollars, the tax dollars of all Lethbridge residents who have children attending your schools, pay for this conference, pay for your attendance that is clearly one-sided on the conversation of identity politics? As a public education institution, schools are mandated to follow curriculum and execute curriculum. Nothing in this report shows me that this board has a clear understanding of what that means, and I'm quite
Sorry,
upset.
Bibiana, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have to say.
The board will carefully consider what you have said today and provide a response in the near future. And next, I will call on Amber, and you're welcome to join her for support. You're good? Okay. So the preamble is the same, and Christine Lee will be providing you with your 5 minutes. She's our timer, so she'll let you know when your time is over. Thank you. Go ahead, Amber.
Okay. I'm sitting before you today to do three things. One, communicate the connection between anti-trans legislation and violence against trans people. Two, using existing district policies, illustrate that the mental and physical well-being of 2S LGBTQIA+ students in Lethbridge are very much your concern and your responsibility. And three, my main reason is to ask you why you haven't released a statement regarding the government's gender policy and its negative effect on your schools and students. First, in 2021, 113 anti-trans bills were proposed in the United States, with the first law signed in Florida on June 1st by Ron DeSantis. Following that barrage of hate-based legislation, 57 trans people were killed by violence in the US that year, the deadliest on record. Early last year in the UK, a 16-year-old trans girl, Brianna Gay, was stabbed to death in a park after UK intervened to block the Scottish government's gender recognition law. On February 8th in Lethbridge, during the planned student walkout in protest of the Alberta government's gender policy announcement, LCI students threw trash, yelled slurs at the protesting students, and some students roared back and forth in their vehicles in a school zone while giving the finger, all in view of high school administration. You likely know that the associate superintendent has been assigned to the LCI administrative staff to deal with this breach of policy by both students and staff at that school. On the same day, February 8th, in Oklahoma, a 16-year-old non-binary student died after being violently beaten in the school bathroom by 3 older female students, and this was the girls' washroom, the day before. This occurred after Oklahoma passed strict sex at birth policies around bathroom use. And 2 days ago, Alberta had its first death because of this policy. A transgender man killed himself in response to the hate and vitriol now being fueled here in this province. Again, this list isn't exhaustive, but suggests a direct link between government policy attempting to control a minority community and subsequent violence against that community. I have read all the Lethbridge School Board's policies several times in the past month. The following is also not an exhaustive list, but these stick out to me in direct opposition to the government's new policies, which belong only to the government currently and not to the school boards. Obviously, the anti-racism and anti-oppression policy 103.1 is the most important here. The government's gender policy is in opposition to every single subpoint. This is the most obvious. It may not have been written for trans students, but it does blanket them. Under General Powers and Duties of Board, Policy 201.3, it states you are responsible for both making policy and ensuring Superintendent's Office oversees policy implementation in schools. Notably, quote, the board is responsible for developing advocacy policy, which sets out the board's response to matters affecting its relationship with the community and society. As a concerned parent, I am not seeing your advocacy for queer students. You have an existing policy for human sexual instruction that is captured by Alberta education curriculum. The government's policy is again, obviously in direct opposition to this existing policy of the school board. Lastly, welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe work environments, policy 400.1 has been broken, in my child's experience, at LCI as a direct result of the government's policy announcement. This is where I connect policy to violence in your schools. Finally, after reviewing the link between government anti-trans policy and violence against trans people, as well as the policies that the board has created and is responsible for, comes my question. Why have you not joined the Calgary Board of Education and Edmonton Public School Board, stood up for gender diverse minorities in your schools, and made a public statement to get the government's policies announcement a month ago? It's very late for you to do so, but it would make a huge impact to the students and parents who have been affected by such specific, targeted government overreach. Why have you not publicly denounced it as it being against existing Lethbridge public school policies, its lack of consultation, its lack of facts, and its lack of preparation for schools to deal with the fallout? Edmonton released 2 statements, one on February 1st and a more in-depth rebuke on February 15th. Calgary released a statement on February 1st. What about you?
Thank you, Amber. On behalf of the board, thank you for your presentation. You can be assured the board will carefully consider what you have said today and provide a response in the near future. Thank you, Amber, and those that have joined her here today. So that concludes our public forum time. And we will move on back to our action item into policy. So Jenny had a bit of a break. Did you come up with anything?
Mike had a good suggestion. What I think was a good suggestion is to consider replacing that statement with the one directly taken from the Education Act. Mike, do you still have that handy? So potentially we could replace that statement with, do you want to just read that? Do you mind? Sorry, do you mind turning on your mic?
Mike. Yeah, it says student, we would change this language, but a student who resides in the attendance area for the school must be given priority over a student who does not reside in the attendance area. And then it could be, and then that maybe segues nice into requests being made to attend a school. Then you make that statement, and then you get into, if you are requesting outside of your attendance boundary, here's where you go. It gives that context. Did you catch that, Kristen, or do you want me to repeat that?
Sorry, say that again. You would still make the same statement, did you say?
Yeah, what I would probably do is we could just start off with a student who resides in the attendance area for the school must be given priority over a student who does not reside in the attendance area, period. And then requests being made to attend a school outside of the attendance area is referred to as school choice, fair and just consideration, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we need it up there to consider it?
Yeah, I don't think she can type it up there. No, it's a PDF. It's a PDF. Yeah. Just a blank Word document.
So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Allison would like to just see it in writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just going to get it on writing in a Word document so that
Thank you,
we can
Kristen. Sorry to
ensure.
put you on the spot.
Say a student who resides in the attendance area for a school must be given priority over a student who does not reside in the attendance area. Must be given priority over a student who does not reside in the attendance area.
Tyler?
I've been sitting next to Craig for too long, obviously. So to me, that's a procedure though. That shouldn't be in policy. Like that's not a policy. That's the procedure of how it's done. So our policy should just say something about school choice as opposed to that. And then that could be like the first line of procedures. Just saying. It's not really a policy statement, right?
My other suggestion would be to consider just beginning the policy with requests being made to attend a school outside of the designated attendance area is referred to as school choice. Do we need any more than that?
That's back to where we were before when Mike had suggested But that was, the conversation was to remove that. Christina?
Yeah, so your suggestion is keep the red part, request being made to attend school outside the designated attendance area is referred to as school choice, end of policy statement. Regulations, this sentence first, to go with the procedure section being in there. Is that what you mean?
And to keep the fair and
regulations,
just consideration, keep that whole piece.
Sorry,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, my suggestion would just be to remove the statement altogether and that a
Remove it.
different statement is not needed.
Remove it there. I think that we need to keep it in the first line of the regulation though, because it's like an Education Act piece that we need to, and I agree with like user ease. Like the point is that it's a parent looking for information and we all want that to be super clear.
Can I clarify, in keeping it in the regulation, would you keep it the statement that is written here or the one that we just put up?
The one that we just put up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Christina's suggestion is we remove the line that says students residing in. So that line would come out. Under regulations would be what Kristen had typed on the Word document, would be what would be added in there under regulations. Accurate? Okay.
Yep.
And then the other amendment in terms of number 1 is there as well. Mike had suggested the amendment of removing 31 out of the Education Act.
Yeah, if everyone's okay, it's minor. It could stay in, it could go out.
We just need to be clear. So
Sorry.
that's okay. So to be clear is for it to be removed out, as well as those other amendments that I just stated.
And
Jenny.
sorry, lastly, under references, we have some periods that should be commas. So it's listing several sections.
So punctuation can be just
Not
amended as needed.
7.10.11.
Yeah. So
7
punctuation
and
can be
10 and
amended
11.
as needed. So we're good with the amendments that I have stated, including removing 31 of the Education Act. So all we need to do is pass a motion that as amended, and it'll be on record that those are the amendments that we're clear on. So Jenny, go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that the board accept policy 501.3.1 school choice as amended.
Excellent. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And those opposed? And that's carried. Okay, Jenny, back to you for 600.1.
Yes, thank you. So this is one that after a little bit of, after discussion, it was decided that we would bring it back to the board for consideration of removing the policy altogether, really, is kind of what looking for a little bit of guidance on this one was the request, with the thought of it not being a necessary policy. So I'll give you a little bit of background to that from the conversation that was had from the Policy Advisory Committee. As we looked through this, what we recognized was it really what is necessary when talking about educational programming in schools is that it is really statement number 1 under regulations. Courses shall be aligned with Alberta education programs of study. It's kind of all that's needed is what was determined. And then what we felt like we recognized in here was kind of a collage of different educational approaches throughout the years, all kind of put in here. And there's a lot of different dated toolkits in this policy. Totally. And so really what we felt was if we've pared this all the way down to just programming should align with the Alberta education programs, that's covered in several other policies. And so that brought us to the conclusion that perhaps this is a very dated policy and should consider being removed entirely. So thoughts on that?
Craig.
Well, one is if you keep it, you've got the Alberta School Act instead of the Education Act at the bottom of it. 2, the board, now I'm all for getting rid of policies. And this would be a good procedure. However, it is noted that if we locally develop courses, the board has to pass it to be official to the, so that it's official with the government of Alberta, right? It's a
The policy
requirement.
for that.
Pardon?
There's a policy for locally
Okay,
developed.
so if there's already a policy, I'm typically in favor of getting rid of it. I mean, it just, if we've already got it so that it covers the approved locally developed courses, then I'm fine.
Christina.
I'm with Craig. And my suggestion actually though is that it not become a procedure. I think it's like far too like value based to be a procedure necessarily. Like that's not operational. That's actually governance pieces, and we cover our values in many other ways. I would agree that this doesn't need to be a policy, but I don't agree that it needs to be a procedure.
So with that, we can then send it to the superintendent to decide next steps on what to do with it if there's agreement that it is not a policy. So Christina.
I guess that's my concern is because, I mean, obviously I trust the values of the executive council, but in principle, sending a document that would allow an operational team to set all the values of a program of study is counterintuitive to governance. So I think like if that's the only option, I think like in principle as a governor, I can't send a document that's full of values. So my vote would be just to eliminate it.
Jenny.
I agree. I think that this was like our superintendent sits on our policy advisory committee as well. So we did hear his voice and relied on it heavily. But now this is a decision of the board. This is our policy. And so if we don't want this policy anymore, it's our prerogative to just say goodbye and throw it away. If there's something in here that you feel the need to retain, then I think as a board, it's still our responsibility to determine what that is. And if we are asking for a procedure to be developed, then we can go to our superintendent with that. But as it stands, this is a policy, and I think it's a dated policy that's unnecessary. So it is something that I do think we have the authority to make the decision today to get rid of entirely. So I support Christina in that notion of saying, let's eliminate totally. So.
Craig.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't really want it to go to procedure, to tell you the truth. I just get rid of it.
Okay. So Jenny, are you prepared to make a motion at this point? Mike has a comment. Mike has a comment anyway. And
I'll jump in and save you. I just finished off because I would have been in trouble like 2 minutes ago here. So couple things just so you know, we did bring this to our admin committee just to kind of get some feedback as well. I don't know exactly what their feedback was. Rod Scott collected that. So that's just an FYI for you. Pardon me?
Turn your mic on when you talk, please.
Yeah, we sent both. We spent some time we just spent some time at our admin committee. We had a little bit of time, and I felt like it's important for us as administrators to get into the habit of, we are going to give feedback on policy. We're going to spend time talking about it. And where I think all of you are exactly right, because when we looked at this policy, we said there's a lot of important value-based statements in here. But it just seemed like it's covered in other spots, right? And so, we also wanted to, before we made a decision, we wanted to know what the board felt. And we also thought, well, do administrators have a perspective on this? Like, we have another policy that we've asked them to go through too. Like, is this a hugely important policy to you or not? I don't know exactly what that feedback is. I don't think that needs to impact our decision making here. The biggest thing for me is, as long as the board's comfortable, that you don't need to say these things like, we offer a broad-based educational program. Because we looked at it too and we thought, boy, this is an odd spot for this policy. There's really important stuff here. Is it covered in other places? Yeah, so anyways, just so you know the context of some of the conversation.
Jenny.
With that understanding of that conversation with the admin, would you recommend then that we hold off on making a decision until we hear back from our administrative representative at Policy Advisory Committee?
doesn't matter if the board's keen to get rolling on it. We can certainly do that. I'd be happy to, if we do end up going with a policy. One of the things I would make sure I was clear to the administrators is it's not the board not interested in your perspective. It's just we had some time, we had these policies on the docket, so we thought we'd go, but we knew that there's a possibility that they just might not be policies, right? So I don't think anybody will feel like, you know, their input wasn't valued or anything like that necessarily.
Tyler.
I don't think even by the way it's written, it's actually a policy. If anything, it was a procedure, but I just don't even think we need it as a procedure anyway. So I'd be happy if we just got rid of it. We just removed the policy from our policies now and just did it and voted on it. That's where I'm at.
Jenny.
I just don't, I just want to lend further, I don't know, information to the conversation you just brought up, because I don't want any perception that we aren't honoring that really valuable and important voice of our administrators. And so there was an additional policy we looked at and again said, is this even necessary at all? Should we throw away the entire policy? And then our administrative representative at Policy Advisory Committee said, actually, we refer to this one. And so then we said, whoa, put on the brakes. Why don't you? And he said, not really, a little bit, but we said, if there's some value in this, we would love to honor it. And so he offered to take it back to get feedback from administrators, and he's going to bring us feedback on that one. And so it is a voice we value very much. So I felt comfortable that representative was in favor of the recommendation to remove this one. And so I would still feel comfortable removing this today, acknowledging that for that other one that we felt like there was more of a need for feedback, we are honoring that.
Christina.
I also think there's no rush. Like we're not bound either way. Like if we want to just wait a breath just to get confirmation, like if you had planned to bring it forward, I'm happy to wait because it doesn't make a difference a month or not.
Yeah, I'm good either way. I think what I feel confident on is I could now, and Jenny probably feels the same way, is we could go back to Policy Advisory Committee or wherever and speak and say, the board was pretty clear on this, like there wasn't a whole bunch of debate, this is what they think. Unless somebody feels strongly, something that we've missed, then okay, this is pretty easy. We can just bring it back the next time too. So whatever you feel on that one.
I'll make a motion and then we can vote accordingly, and if it fails, I'll make a different motion. I move to remove policy. Is that the wording? Would I just remove? Okay, delete. I move to remove policy 600.1, guiding principles for educational programming in schools.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Anything else for policy?
Stay tuned for next month.
Perfect.
That's it for this month.
And I think you had made comment that you're going to have
We
minutes.
do have some policies going up on the website. Our next meeting's in a week, so keep checking.
Stay watching.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So then we'll go to item 10.2, which is the removed item from consent agenda, Public School Boards Association of Alberta. Craig.
Thank you. I just would encourage trustees, if they're available, you don't have to drive up. It's all on, you can do hybrid, to be involved with the PD that Public School Boards has. It was great. If you look at number 2, I have to say this, that on Tuesday night after the town hall, I found out that we did not have a student or an alumnus of our school division going up to Edmonton to present on esports. And I asked Bradley Pike to come up, our board chair's son. And before I could even email Jesse, he'd already texted him and said, I'm coming. And I might add that the presentation from our board and from Allison and Jesse and Koji was excellent, but Bradley sealed the deal. And I'll tell you that he was well-spoken. He talked about his learning difficulties at first and how this has helped him. And the trustees were really impressed. So I just want to make sure that people know that. And that's using our alumnus from our school division in a positive way. The second one, and this is really important considering what we've had for reports, Joni Avram and Pam Boytanik are our public school board associate consultants. Joni is a professor at Ambrose University in Calgary, and she's also researched a lot about positive and negative information. And I just would like to just go over this because we're going to have those debates. And it says, trustees and school boards have a duty to ensure the efficacy of programs designed to improve social outcomes in school. However, research suggests such programs typically do not work and can even do harm. Students are more likely to be bullied in schools with anti-bullying programs. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs can amplify and activate biases. And despite more prevalent pride campaigns, support for LGBTQ plus issues are in decline. And she points out using positive reinforcement and feeling supported is more effective than showing the negative effects of what we don't want to do. And what is cause and effect, what leads to better outcomes. So what I wanted to, we're going to be doing new policies or revising our policies. When I talked to her and when she presented, she said, you have to get rid of negative comments, negative feelings in a policy, and you have to go positive. So I would just encourage us as we start to look at our policies that we watch the wording of it and we do not put words in that are going to upset people in a negative way, and then you have kickback. And she showed us a bunch of advertisements, and it's interesting when you had sexual harassment advertisements that were negative, sexual harassment went up in the areas. When you had drinking and driving advertisement that was negative, drinking and driving went up. So I think it's important I just bring that up for us to start thinking about that. And the third one is, I would encourage everyone to please look at Prairie Land Public School Division. They made a really good presentation. They turned and changed a lot of their policies. They went down to 15 and put a lot of stuff that was in policy in governance operation manual. And so just please look at that and see as we go into this policy review with our consultant, please look at that so that we have a better idea of what we want. So those are the two areas. And the last one is, everyone's got this, and it's what are the greatest challenges your school division is currently facing? Please check off all concerns that your board has. Every time we have a meeting, we do an environmental scan. We had a really good one on diploma exams about whether we should keep them and all that. And there's calls to action. But on this, I have to give back at our April meeting. So I would appreciate sometime between now and our board meeting in March that you fill this out and just give it to me, and I'll synthesize the information. And that would help us. So when we're asked what's going on, what are challenges, then I can say, we might have high enrollment, threat of charter school, whatever. But please just check off and then write down some comments. It would really help me out when I do a presentation, when we get into our board meeting and we talk about the environmental scan. So that's the only thing. And if it's all right with the board, then in March we'll take some time and talk about it. Okay,
Christina.
Thanks, Greg, for sharing the notes. Always good to hear about the PSBA pieces now that we're a member there. And just as a follow-up to the report, similar to the note that was recently shared about my notes, notes are are a summary of whoever heard it from an external presenter. These are not necessarily the views of any group. So I would suggest that just to be clear that I don't know that necessarily all the notes under point 3, Joni Avram and Pam Boyntic are necessarily the perspectives of PSBA or all of their members. A simple Google search does reveal that these facts are not necessarily facts as presented. There is a great deal of support for all of these issues. As a person who professionally runs many programs that are mentioned here, which we base on evidence, things like anti-bullying campaigns have a great deal of evidence behind them to reduce bullying, both perpetration and victimization of bullying. So just want to suggest that these are notes, not necessarily all facts, similar to the comment that was made about my notes previously. And that many people have different perspectives, and there's lots of different research out there. So I just want to encourage people to take notes from any professional development with a grain of salt.
Any other comments, Craig?
Thank you for those comments, Christina. I would just say that there are numerous studies that does show the opposite, but again, it all depends on your perspective of where you're looking in that. And so I do agree that if you're going to look at things, you have to look at both sides of the coin. I know that I am currently reading a book from a Black educator in the States that points out the same kind of topics, but he does have some facts, and I'll be glad to share them later. But I think the purpose of this is to get people thinking and thinking positively about how to do things instead of always looking at the negative. And so that's why I shared that, so that we can look at how do we phrase words, how do we do things so that it becomes more positive and more accepting of everybody. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I know that we're still 12 minutes away, but before I get into division highlights, I'm just looking for a motion to extend our meeting past 6 o'clock. Christine? So the motion is to extend our meeting past 6 o'clock. Those in favor? Hesitantly, Tyler, I know, needs to leave by 6:15. So that is carried. We don't have a ton left, but I didn't want to interrupt division highlights with having to stop to do that piece. So we will move on to division highlights. So who would like to go first? Craig.
Yes, I thought I was going to a school council at GS Lakey last Wednesday, or Wednesday before our break, and there wasn't any, but they were practicing their dance. And so I got to watch a little bit of the dance, and it's quite exciting. This past weekend, I watched Winston Churchill, Chinook High School, in the Winston Churchill boys tournament, and it was quite good. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I watched about 6 games, Friday and Saturday, and so I had to leave before the final because my granddaughter was playing in a quarterfinal for Lakeland, so I apologize to Winston for that, but that's what I've done.
Thank you. Other division highlights. Christine.
Well, it was Carnival at Ecole Agnes Davidson, and so I got to go to the Sugar Shack on Lumberjack Day. It was a lot of fun just to see the students all dressed up, and got to eat some maple syrup out of the snow. And Cone Ice did a really great job supporting the school, and it was just really fun to be there and have a tour of the school and just talk to some of the staff and some of the students there that day. I was able to take in Brothers Grimm Out of Order at Gilbert Patterson. They did a really great job. It was a fun production, and we've already talked about them, but I just really enjoyed connecting with community members at our town hall and our Spanish bilingual evenings.
Thank you. Christina, are you ready? Okay. Andrea.
I had so much fun with the EAs at LCI learning sign language, and they were such great sports. Oh my goodness. There were smiles all around, and so that was such a fun afternoon to spend with them. So thank you to LCI for having me. I took in the play at Patterson with Robbie and Christina. We laughed so much. It was such a funny play. So, and seeing that there were 70 cast members. I think they did it in troops. It was wonderful. I got out to Plaxton and Senator Buchanan and General Stewart with Valentine pencils and erasers, and it's fun when the kids start to recognize you. I love that. And I was at Senator Buchanan's council last night, and Mike and Allison were both there, and they're working on safe walks to school with the City of Lethbridge, and Allison was there, and so they're doing great work at Senator Buchanan and Nicholas Sharon in that vein. And we even got to hold a puppy. So ding ding came to the meeting. And I also appreciated town hall, as I said, and being with little Maylee. And I appreciated Erin Herkett walking us through the curriculum too. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Tyler, you're good? Making sure you're done at 6:15? Jenny.
I had the same experience. I went to go to a school council that, unbeknownst to me, had been moved. So I was on Valentine's Day, and it actually happened the week before, but still got the opportunity to chat with some of our great administrative staff at the schools, and always appreciate that opportunity. But I just wanted to highlight, even in my own home, what the busyness of our home is looking like right now is largely due to the volunteerism of the extra effort that our teachers and our schools are putting into things like, I've got kids in rugby and on a skating field trip today, and they've got choir, and they're going to cross country, and track and fields. And there's so many opportunities that are being afforded to our students, reaching so many different talents and skills. And it's not just my kids, obviously, this is division wide. And so I see this as I go to my schools that I'm the liaison for, and the productions that they put on, and also the sports that we're able to watch. But just the extra effort that goes into making all of those programs work so well is always so impressive to me, and very much appreciated as a parent, and also as a trustee. So
Thanks, Jenny. For me, obviously, we've heard lots about the presentation from our tech team in regards to esports, and it was a great opportunity to be able to join them, to share with other trustees from across the province and the importance of esports and what our division has done for our students. And I know Craig brought up in regards to my son and where he's come from, and anybody that has known or experienced his journey would be absolutely amazed to know that, and that is not just what happens at home, but what happens in our division, created a student that was able to go and be able to speak and to get to where he's at. So it was great to be able to speak together with the division staff on the importance of esports in our division. Town hall, I already spoke in regards to that, but definitely huge kudos and always an enjoyable evening. And this year was definitely topped it. One thing I talked last year about it is during this Family Day week is I find that out in the community, I have more opportunities to engage with some of our families and staff that are out in a variety of places, whether that's at community events or whether that's at Costco. And just the engaging conversations that I've been able to have and to hear experiences that people are having, and having those conversations is definitely important. And not only town hall, but having those other personal conversations of just what's happening for people in our division is great. And then lastly, and I know it's going to come up at our March meeting, but I don't want to leave it till March, is that our LCI mixed curling team won provincials. So they will be here for us to present certificates to them, but I can't leave it a month to not say anything. And in addition to that is that we did have other curling teams from our division go up to provincials. So I know that Churchill team was up there as well. And there's other LCI teams that went up to the curling provincials. And then Chinook had a good showing over the season with curling. So a huge thank you to all of our staff that support our students to be able to participate in a sport that they each have at their heart. So we'll look forward to seeing the LCI mixed curling team at our meeting in March. So that is all I have. Craig.
if I don't say this, LCI will be mad at me. I've also watched LCI girls and boys play in their league too, basketball.
Okay, now Tyler has a division highlight.
No, I don't. I was just going to say, in regard to the curling for the provincials, maybe Avis should come and present their certificates to them for that, because
Perfect. We will ensure that Avis is invited to the next meeting. So thank you for all the division highlights. It's great to have everything that happens in our division. So next I have community conversations, and our next one, I've been working together with a West Side coffee shop. We're just needing to narrow down the date because they're moving, but it's at Pedals, Paws, and Bears. Christina, help me out. Okay, Paddles, Paws, and Bears on the west side, and it will be in the evening, and I will confirm the date once we have narrowed that down with them, but it is a great location for us to, nice cozy little coffee shop, and it's nice to be able to get out into the community. So I will communicate that with Garrett, who will highlight that on our website. So next up is the request, 12.2, request for alternative program for Lethbridge School Division. So you will see in there that there was a request put forward from the Lethbridge Muslim Association back in October. The board, as well as myself and superintendent, met on a number of occasions to look at the proposal and see where we were at. At this time, it's not feasible for us to be able to proceed with this, and we've had those that respectful dialogue with us and the Lethbridge Muslim Association, and look forward to working together in the future on any further initiatives that they bring forward. So are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will move on to 12.3, which was the policy consultant. So at our last meeting in January, we did speak in regards to us hiring a policy consultant. At that time, we had not confirmed that all the details would be worked out. So we have now signed a contract with David Steele, and he is going to be our policy consultant. He'll be starting in March with the board, and then from there, there'll be work making sure the important piece of our stakeholders are involved in the policy development piece, and that all the requests and suggestions are passed back through our stakeholders as well. So that piece is certainly important to our board. So watch for more information. At this point, we don't have the date yet, just with he's not able to start until after March 3rd, and then we have our strategic planning. So it'll be sometime mid to late March that we'll meet with him as a board, and then we'll know next steps, and we'll be able to communicate that out. But I know that that's important to a number of our community members that are watching and our staff. So we are going to be moving forward on that, and we're excited to see where we get to with new policy framework policies. So good. Any questions or comments? I got to make sure that I go past 6 o'clock there. It's 6 o'clock now. I'm doing good. And you will see that there is correspondence there for public forum response to Nicole Williams. And we had our public forum today, so we will ensure that we work together to get those responses done, and those will be in our next package. So are there any questions on any of these last few items? Seeing none, look at that. It's like 6 o'clock. Right? We're not going past 6. Should I wait till 6:01? Okay, so we are adjourning at 6 o'clock.